And to that piece of lieutenant that's always on his podcast, bash us, him.
All right, attention to roll call. Sorry, having a little technical difficulties over here this morning with the Wi-Fi. I'm on the road, so not working out too well for me today. So,
well, he says he's on the road, but if you look at his background, it looks like he's in jail. So, I think Kaz Daughtry got him. So we apologize for the delay this morning. 8:05 live Eastern Time. Good morning, everybody. Of course, for me, 4:05, 49th state of Alaska. We're a little late today. We're late to roll call, so we'll put it on 28s. But we're good. You know, we're happy to be here as always. John's going to make it through. We're going to get you the information that's out there. So what's going on right now? This topic, I think, is hot. My phone was off the hook yesterday. There were so many opinions on this, and rightfully so. Rightfully so. So who's suing, and what are they alleging? And I say it's the top brass striking back. You know what? It's I think it's kind of karma that this loop is happening. Some of it, rightfully so, and some of it is questionable. So, John, what do we got going on? We got 4 top NYPD chiefs suing Eric Adams and the Crumbs company. What are your thoughts?
I mean, like when you look at it overall, obviously everyone knows I'm very biased towards Eric Adams and his Crumbs crew. I don't like them. I don't make any qualms about it. But I think that when I look at the lawsuits and I read all the lawsuits, there's a lot of truth to them, and there's a lot of legal actions that happened, as well as there's a lot of low integrity actions that happened. But there's a lot of hypocrisy in their complaints as well, and so I got to be honest about it. When we talk about the nepotism and we talk about the cronyism, particularly related around that, I'm not talking about the corruption. I'm not talking about selling promotions. I'm not talking about any of that. But just on the surface of everything, when we talk about nepotism and cronyism, I mean, to me, it's like, oh, so you're telling me you guys never engaged in nepotism and cronyism? All for you, And so, like, I acknowledge all those complaints before we go ahead from people in the rank and file, from people who were stepped over through nepotism and cronyism by all 4 of these chiefs. I acknowledge all of those complaints as well. So there is a little hypocritical stance to it. However, I will say, reading the complaints, I think there's a lot of merit. I think there's a ton of merit to what they're saying. I think it falls in line with everything that's happened in the New York City Police Department under Eric Adams. And I think that, when we go through each of them individually, I think they really did have pretty decent careers in the NYPD that were cut short really by means of corruption.
So I think it's important to note that we have had our finger on the pulse for several years now, but particularly when it comes to some of the meat and potatoes of this lawsuit, we have had our finger on the pulse for months. We sounded the horn months ago when both John and myself and Sal and Marlon, and even before we had the executive perspective jump on board, and even before now we have 10-4 Tavern, we were very adamant when we spoke about the rumors that we've heard from credible sources, and we'll keep them anonymous, of course, that there is pay for play and that promotions are being paid for while Ed Caban was the police commissioner for the NYPD. The appearance of impropriety was there. We talked about the potential link to the Hispanic Society because a lot of the rumors and the credible sources that we hear about promotions were related to these Hispanic Society. Now, what's interesting about that also is a lot of people said, you and John are crazy, right? Are we so crazy right now? Now, have these cases been proven or disproven? No. Has a district attorney brought up any claims yet? No. Are these cases proven at this point? No, of course they're allegations. But now from this podcast, and we get allegations from these chiefs that are independent from each other. We've never spoken to them about potential pay for play and paying for promotions. So are we so crazy and are we so radical? So shout out to Serena Townsend. She's on this post right now. Great job in her representation. The lawsuit was very descriptive, very articulate. I think that you don't have to be a cop to understand it, the way that it's broken down. Now, I will say there is a lot of hypocrisy in there. And I'm going to talk a lot today because obviously John's having some Wi-Fi issues, but we're going to make it through. We're going to get you the information that's going on. And I think that what's very interesting to me, there's 4 chiefs involved in this. But what I've been saying for 2 years right now, and so many people have told me I'm crazy. Am I so crazy right now? And I've said this. Every chief in the NYPD at this point is compromised. Every chief. And you have to say, well, what do you mean every chief? If there is an actual promotion scam going on, there are so many different units that a promotion process gets vetted, and that so many chiefs have to be involved in the promotion process. And now yet, these 4 chiefs are speaking out. What did they know before? And if their careers were not tainted or affected by their lawsuits, would they have come forward? Would they have made these allegations? That's the question. That's also where the hypocrisy is. And that's why I say, if it's true, if their allegations are true, because you have to say to yourself now, are they true or are they not? And if these allegations are true, every chief is compromised. Every chief knew what's going on, including them. How long do they have this in their pocket and never said a word? But now they came out and said it. Now, also with that being said, if it is true, it holds a lot of merit. And some of them had pretty damn good careers, especially Pontillo. Out of the 4, Pontillo is a household name, and overall is a credible individual. Now, the Veneziano case, I think, is quite interesting. That's a real interesting case of what he's investigating. Now, when it comes to McCormick, I know personally, working in the Bronx, his daughter received many amenities from the NYPD, and early on in her career was put into high-tech units to get detected. So I know there is complete hypocrisy to this, and we're going to dive into that. John, what are your thoughts on that as far as chiefs being compromised, and how much information do they know before this lawsuit, and why come forward now?
Well, I'd love to know what they knew about COVID and all the illegal actions, and hear their thoughts about what they thought about that mandate. I would love to hear that from all 4 of them, honestly, because what happened during that time, what happened during 2020, what happened when we just changed the way we police protests. Like, I'd love to hear it from their perspective, because, we all turn a blind eye to this. We could say, oh, there's corruption here, but there wasn't corruption there. And let's forget about John and Marlon. Those guys wear tinfoil hats. So I'd love to know what they know about that. But, when you look at particularly, like, let's go individualize, right? Because it's hard to talk about 4 people at once. Let's talk about Essig first, right? Essig, chief of detectives. It's well known. It's been reported in the paper that his son had pinched a girl's ass or something like that in Atlantic City. And at the same time, like 3 years prior to that in Atlantic City, a kid had gotten into a scuffle with bouncers. Whether he was the aggressor or not, I don't know. Ultimately, his criminal case gets thrown out. That kid gets terminated. Essig's son moves further in his career, gets promoted, right? So you see the nepotism there. So when people talk about that, but when you look at Essig, what he's claiming now, you have to look at it. 3-star chief of detectives. He was in charge of the detective bureau. It's been rumored, I wasn't working there at the time, but it's been rumored that he was the CO of a particular command in the Bronx that Ed Caban was a lieutenant in. And when Ed Caban was the lieutenant there, he was like, when he gets there, Essig, he's like, who is this guy? Why are all these perps hanging around? What's going on with all these girls in the station house? I don't like that guy. And he transfers them to a different precinct. Says, I don't want this guy working for me. And again, in those rumors, it's rumored that the CO of that precinct called me and said, who the hell did you send me? Who the hell is this guy? Anyway, Ed Caban later on winds up becoming the police commissioner after Keechant Sewell, right? She leaves abruptly, right? She leaves totally abruptly, and obviously Essig's out immediately, right? And it's been rumored that Keechant Sewell trusted Jimmy Essig very much. So again, I think when we look at Essig's lawsuit right off the bat, we have to still question Where's the integrity in Keechan Sewell? What happened? Why did she rush out the door? Why did she leave? She left abruptly for a reason. There was a reason there. And now James Essig is sitting there and saying that there was a lot of nepotism happening and he wasn't playing ball. There was corruption happening and he wasn't playing ball. And people were paying $15,000 to get promoted. And they were paying it directly to Ed Caban. So, I mean, to me, yeah, was he involved in the circle of nepotism and then he fell out of favor? Like we always say, the NYPD is the Game of Thrones. Yeah, absolutely. That's what happened, right? You saw he was on top, right, with his son. His son gets out of trouble. And then you see him take a spill when the access of power changes in the NYPD. But we told you on this podcast, and there was plenty of rumors, and there was a federal investigation into all of these guys selling promotions. What knowledge does he have? I'm sitting here and I'm saying, yes. Does his lawsuit have merits? Yes. But Chief, did you notify the FBI? Did you notify the Chief of Internal Affairs? Where did these allegations go? When did you become aware that he was selling promotions? What corruption have you seen? So while there may be merits to the case, and there may be need for compensation in there, there's also have to start to question. I agree with you, Eric, when you're saying they're all compromised. To me, it sounds like there's a lot of people that are compromised here. There's like, I find it funny that they all don't name the same plaintiffs. They all have different access and plaintiffs. But I mean, if one's involved, everybody's involved.
Spot on. That's exactly what we're saying. Got a great comment here. It comes from Dan, Romania. How you been, brother? We haven't seen you in a while. Great friend to the podcast here. He says, allegations by Essig are serious. Yes, I think that Essig's allegations paint a very troubling picture for the NYPD. He also says, if he saw this corruption going on, which is what John was just saying, and I'm saying also, why didn't he report it then when he was active? Why did he wait so long to report this? So, excuse me. And that's my point to this. I think, I want to say, if I'm correct, I have to look it up. Ed Caban stepped down about a year ago. I would say it's close to a year ago. Maybe a little bit shy of a year ago. How long did he know that? It's a great question, Dan. And that's why I've been saying these chiefs are all compromised. And I'm going to tell you right now, I'm going to assume he knew, because in this lawsuit, which John just reiterated to you, some of the nomenclature's lawsuit goes back to when he observed him as a lieutenant in the command. This is a long time ago. We're talking about the appearance of impropriety. Now, at this point, these allegations are troubling. We're talking about bribes. We're talking about schemes for promotion. When did he become aware of this? And I'm going to assume it was over a year ago. And if that's accurate, that it was over a year ago, you have a duty as a law enforcement officer, despite any rank. It's not encouraged, but you have a duty to report corruption. Something we always talk about, especially a chief. You're the upper echelon, you're the leadership of the NYPD, and you're supposed to eradicate, and you're supposed to, in addition to internal affairs, to remove all potential for misconduct and corruption in the NYPD. So I find it also troubling that this was not reported, because if the chief did in fact know a year ago or more, who in his underlings was aware and did not report it? Now, I feel sorry.
Well, to be fair, we don't know that it wasn't reported.
No, we don't. We don't. That's what I'm saying. But I'm going to assume it wasn't. And if it was, no action was taken. So, and I'm glad you said that, John, because that's the point that I want to make. That so, for one, either it was not reported, and if it was reported, no action was taken, because we know that the internal affairs are henchmen for the upper echelon. This is a very troubling case that goes on with Essig, and we know that Essex, and I'm going to say this because I used this word in the past, that the reason why I've been asking for an old male, stale, pale chief on the job, a white chief, to not be a coward and to point out the atrocities of this job. And no one has done it. No one has done it because they all paved the way for their offspring and they're self-serving. And Essig's offspring was well taken care of in the NYPD. In most cases, if what happened with his offspring, that person would be terminated and would never have employment with the NYPD. So yes, they receive nepotism, they receive cronyism, but they're only speaking out now because it's self-serving. As troubling as it is, this is self-serving.
So again, like I said, there's a lot of merit to it, and there's a lot of hypocrisy in it. That's, I specifically remember when Caban was getting appointed. He was on the stage. It was at the time when Eric Adams was basically demonizing every white person in the NYPD, particularly elder white males in the NYPD. And James Essig was standing directly behind Eric Adams with John Shell. They were both standing there with their thumbs up their butt while Eric Adams was saying, that's what they were doing, dude. What did he say? What did he say? It was a few years ago. He said the NYPD has a great crime fighting profile, but it has an image problem. When you look up top, you don't see the youth. You don't see the diversity, right? And so Essig and Shell was sitting there like, ooh, I wonder if he's talking about me. And they didn't say anything, And so, like, my thing is, like, if you weren't asked to step down, would you have reported it? Or would you still be up there now? And so that's why I say, yeah, there was corruption. But I think the bigger thing that when you look at all this is what you have to say is, where really could he go? And should the and again, we've brought this point up a million times that the NYPD is incapable of policing itself, especially when there's corruption stemming up top, especially when it's coming from the mayor's office and the police commissioner and any of that. So could he have went to the FBI? Sure, he could have. But is that really the proper chain of reporting? No. The proper chain of reporting is what? You will go to the Inspector General. Who's the Inspector General? Internal Affairs Bureau, right? So he may have reported it to them. And I think, but I think we should segue into the Internal Affairs Bureau when you're done with your thoughts on this and go on to Veneziano next, because it shows a pattern that's happening and it definitely gives merits to what they're saying.
So I refer to Essig's son as offspring because I've been saying this for quite some time, that the chiefs are self-serving to pave the way for their offspring and also for self-promotion. But what's interesting is we have Essig now speaking up, but his son received a lot of benefits and amenities that most would not. At the time that Essig's son was arrested, it was a felony charge at the time in Atlantic City. That's a felony charge for an allegation of groping a woman. And that case was not dismissed. I think what's interesting about that case is the son pled guilty to a health code violation, which cost $1,000. At the time, his son was on probation. And his son is currently employed with the NYPD and maintained his position. Any other police officer, and that's why I still say there are 3 tiers in the NYPD. Tier 1, that's the upper echelon. Tier 2, those with ties with nepotism, and Tier 3, general population. And if you were a general population police officer, you would have been terminated. But obviously, he was Tier 2, tied to nepotism, and the nepotism he received under former Chief Essig was, in fact, astronomical to maintain his employment, especially in a charge with potential sexual deviancy, which the department is suffering from and has a cancer throughout the entire department. And under the Eric Adams administration is paying out the nose for these allegations. I think it's completely disgusting. So I see the hypocrisy in this. And I have questions. I have a lot of questions. And it's exactly what Dan Romania said. When did you become aware of this? When did you decide to speak out? Now, let's say, for instance, Essig never became aware of this. Being in his position over a year ago, did you start to probe to look into this and say, hey, am I working in with an administration that has integrity? Or do you just, excuse me, or do you just turn a blind eye? So before we speak on Veneziano, do you think that there is some type of responsibility and accountability when you're in a leadership position that high in the police department, and so much appearance of improprieties coming out, the investigation by the feds, if you have no knowledge, and I find it hard to believe, let's pretend he has no knowledge, do you have a responsibility to start to inquire if there is some merit to these allegations?
Wait, give me 1 second. I got a truck passing here. Give me 1 second.
He wants to pretend he's got a truck passing. Meanwhile, it looks like he's sitting on a correction bus right now. But
all right, I'm good. Sorry. So do you have a responsibility? You absolutely have a responsibility. And like I said, you don't rise to the rank of 3-star chief by having integrity. You don't rise, especially in Eric Adams' police department. You don't get in one of those positions if you have integrity. I mean, that's the bottom line. So do you have an obligation? Yes, you do. But where were they during the COVID mandate? Again, everyone did this. They saw no evil. They heard no evil. They spoke no evil. They're like, I don't know what's going on. Yeah, no, everything's good. Yeah, this is all normal. Everything's normal. Like, nobody's getting department trials. It's good. I'm just going to get my son an exemption, and I'm just going to get my daughter an exemption, and I'm just going to get myself an exemption, and I'm going to let them fire everybody else. And yeah, it's okay. It's totally fine to deny people their faith and all that other stuff. So is it incumbent on them to? But they're not. And again, everyone, I see it all over the internet. Oh, Keechant Sewell was a class act. She was a class act. She motherfucker. Excuse me. Sorry. She was a class act. She was this. She was that. What did she know? She ran out the door. Why'd she leave? And these are the people that worked for her. They know why she left. She knows why she left. You know who doesn't know why you left? All you people that saying she's a class act. Did she have a responsibility to report corruption? She absolutely did. Why'd she leave the police department? I'll tell you why. Because in my opinion, she thought Eric Adams and his Crumbs team were all going to go down at some point and go to jail. She didn't know that later on down the road, Trump would come along and give him a pardon so they could help him build a casino. That's what they didn't know, right? So, like, they didn't know all that was going to happen. So they scattered. That's basically what happened. She runs out the door. She leaves all her people wide open. She doesn't say a word to anyone, and now she's working for the Mets. And she's not telling anybody anything that happened during the Adams administration. When we know what happened during the Adams administration, it was run like a crime family. And what Essig is telling you is, yeah, they were exactly running it like a crime family. And yeah, are there merits to his case? Yeah, there are, 100%. Are there allegations of corruption? Yeah, there's a lot of them. And who's paying for them? Nobody. You know who's paying for them? You guys are. Right? You guys are, because you're not getting overtime. You're getting heavily scrutinized. You're being treated like you're the people that were selling promotions, and you're the people that were trading overtime for cash for ass. That's how you're being treated. And here he is, boo-hoo, I wanted to retire in 6 years. Give me $5 million. That's what I see. I'm sorry. Like, I got to call it what it is. Are there merits to his lawsuit? Absolutely. But where were you, Chief? Where were you all this time? Where was Keechant Sewell?
So that is spot on. Exactly that. I mean, for the most part, the overwhelming majority of the cops that I speak to, and of course I'll keep them anonymous, they love Sewell. And I don't know why it's been sold that Sewell is like this woman that has this cape. Don't get me wrong. In person, I would say her poise and her presence was calm. Her demeanor was professional. She appeared to be super intelligent, but we never got to see her potential. And we never got to see if she holds the weight of integrity because she never spoke out. Even throughout this entire investigation, the FBI removing phones, the appearance of impropriety, the public knowledge of the case, we've never heard a word from Sewell, former Police Commissioner Keechant Sewell, to speak out about what she learned in the police department. And it would be great just for transparency to say, hey, during my short tenure, in my 18 months as police commissioner, here's the practices that I did see. And here's why these things could not happen or did not happen. Or she could have spoken out and said, hey, while I was police commissioner, here's practices I noticed that could be fixed because it did leave room for these allegations to actually ferment and actually occur within the NYPD. So we never heard neither. So that's a problem. Again, I don't see why she's this white horse in this. So let's talk about Veneziano, and I think that's a really interesting case in this. That's a very interesting case because I have those same questions. Now, according to former executive Joseph Veneziano, that he faced retaliation for investigating overtime when he was the second in command in internal affairs. He was the assistant chief. He was the second in command in internal affairs, which is internal affairs, if I'm right, is the second largest bureau in the entire police department, other than the Patrol Services Bureau. So you hold a lot of weight. These are important investigations. These investigations did not just happen. So how long did he know also? How long was he investigating this? And when former Chief Iglesias retired abruptly from the police department and was removed from internal affairs at the height of the investigation into Madry and the public knowledge that was released, why didn't he speak out then? Why did he speak out that, hey, I was retaliated and I was removed for investigating the same case that went just public? Never did we hear a word until now. So there is hypocrisy. There's a lot of merits to this case. I read it, and so should you. But we have to ask, same thing that Dan Romania said before, why wasn't there any outcry before, and why now?
Yeah, so Veneziano, do you hear this truck? I got another one coming. Could you hear me?
Yeah, it sounds like sanitation. No, it's all good, though.
Yeah. All right. So anyway, it is sanitation. Good he is, Eric. Good observation skills. So,
oh, you're funny.
so when you think about Veneziano, right? So he was a chief in internal affairs. He was the 2-star. He wasn't the deputy commissioner or the chief of internal affairs. He was right behind. So he was the 2-star chief in internal affairs. So he's saying that because he investigated Paul Saraceno prior to Paul Saraceno retiring and coming back, Paul Saraceno, prior to coming back to the NYPD and being promoted under Jessica Tisch, by the way, he was hit for stealing time on the job, right? Misusing time and all this other stuff. Veneziano saying he investigated that case. He hit Paul Saraceno. Paul Saraceno retires. Now insert the Crumbs crew, right? Keechon Sewell's out. Ed Caban steps in. He puts his boy in charge of internal affairs. Internal affairs, what's the first things that happen? They bring Paul Saraceno back. Paul Saraceno becomes goes to start work. I believe he's either working in the police commission. No, he's working in the chief of department's office. Excuse me. He's working in the chief of department's office. Marjorie brings him back. And they immediately go after. This is prior to Paul being promoted, by the way. He comes back and they go right after Veneziano and they cut Veneziano's head off. Now, that is a normal thing that happens with chiefs, right? Like when like say I take over the NYPD today, I become the police commissioner. I'm gonna walk in. It's a Game of Thrones. I'm gonna walk in. You're out. You're up. You're in. You're out. See you later. Bye. You know, Rob Lukash. I wrote an article. I didn't get to put his quote in there. I meant to edit it. I'm having problems doing it. But basically what he was saying is like, it's kind of a common practice what happens. I mean, it's very common what happens in the NYPD. It's a Game of Thrones. People are in, people are out, people are asked to leave. But the difference between what Veneziano's saying and that practice is that he's saying it's retaliation based upon the corruption I investigated, which is a legitimate complaint. And it legitimately happened, right? So were there things going on during that time in internal affairs that probably should have made its way outside of internal affairs that were never reported? I guarantee it. And we don't know those things today because, again, it's a little self-serving.
Johnny, got the sanitation truck again? Anyway, you know, I think it's important to note that in this case, that Joseph Veneziano is saying that he was pushed out and had a forced retirement November 2023. I just want you to think about that. We're now halfway through 2025. This is close to 2 years that he was forced out. This is a long time. So how long prior to that was he in charge or was he part of, right? Because he was second in command in investigating the abuse of overtime. How much was this going on? Obviously, this was going on under the Eric Adams administration. I mean, this is a long time we're talking about. And yet, we never heard a peep until now. Why not? Unless, listen, could there be devil's advocate and give the benefit of the doubt? Is Joseph Veneziano potentially talking to the feds at this point? We don't know. We don't know. But the fact that he's now publicly named in this lawsuit, to me, indicates no. But it's possible. Maybe he was, maybe he wasn't. But I would say at this point, no. But we're talking about almost 2 years, and it finally comes out. Rob Lukesh made a great comment before. By the way, I got to find it. Let me see if I find it. But here we go. And it alludes to what you just said before, John. Having known all 4 chiefs while working, they would never, listen to that, they would never report for fear of retaliation. Only after being told to leave did they report. And that's exactly what we're saying here. We have to assume. Go ahead, John.
No, I was going to say, and that just speaks to the larger problem, right? Is that, like, knowing them, the system's built against them, right? That's what Rob's saying.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
The system's built so that you
Rob
can't report corruption.
Exactly. And that's what we've been saying for the longest time. The system and the design, the nomenclature, the NYPD, the chips are stacked. They can't report. And you know what? And the question is it that they can't report just because of the system or because they are part of the problem? Internal Affairs, we have identified and shown you how they're basically henchmen for the upper echelon for the police department and those that get the benefits and nepotism. So, yes, would there be retaliation? Yes. But at some point in your career, especially when you're in the position that these men have, the position that he's had is over 20 years of the NYPD, working as a chief. At some point, though, you have to report it and face retaliation. Frank Palagucci gave us some coffee and donuts. We appreciate it. But whistleblowers get retaliated always. And yes, that's true. I mean, John Scola, great interview, by the way. If you haven't seen it, you got to check. Go back. Sal Greco had John Scola on. So please take a look at that. And during that interview, it was awesome. That interview was great because John Scola laid it out that when you make an allegation through a lawsuit, you are going to face retaliation. You are going to be on that fund. And that's why you have to start with documentation to protect yourself. And that's where John Scola would come in, or your attorney that's representing you, to help protect you. But yes, you have to understand that you are going to face a slippery slope, and it's going to be tough. But if that's the case, that no one's ever going to report it, well, guess what happens, John? Numerous members of the NYPD, like you and Marlon, get pushed out of the NYPD for being unvaccinated or dirty. Sal Greco loses his job because of political ties that are now the same people that fired him are now up in arms and taking pictures for the same politics as supposedly Sal Greco's affiliation. So, again, hypocrisy after hypocrisy. I could not get promoted to captain because of substantiated civilian complaints that I never had play out in a courtroom by the police commission of the NYPD. I was told I was not promotable, and yet we have John Shell that made it to chief patrol and eventually chief department when he cheated on his taxes, and he also had a questionable shooting. We talk about hypocrisy after hypocrisy. Are we tired of it? I'm tired of it. So you know what? Do I feel bad for them? I really don't. I have to be honest. I don't.
Yeah, so the tax sheet gets promoted to the chief of department. The tax sheet and the murderer gets promoted to chief of department, and you can't get because of something that really the NYPD never even disciplined before. So it made absolutely no sense. The whole thing's a joke. So is there merits to Veneziano's lawsuit? Absolutely, there's merits to Veneziano's lawsuit. There absolutely is. He was pushed out. He was pushed out. He was forced out over investigating corruption. It was retaliation. Usually that happens, but it happens for much less things, and people don't talk about it. But what you're hearing here is just a system built upon retaliation and corruption, and it's not that it didn't exist prior to Eric Adams. It's just that the type of corruption and the type of retaliation and the type of actions that were taking, the low integrity actions that were taken under Eric Adams, those was what is unprecedented. It's not unprecedented that cronyism, nepotism, and retaliation exist in the NYPD, and the IAB has been completely the arm of the upper echelon of the NYPD to not only keep them safe from complaints and corruption investigations and from crimes that they commit, but also to go after anyone that does report it, whistleblowers, anything like that. And what we saw under Eric Adams is he even weaponized the EEO portion of it. So like McCormick, I don't know, I don't know personally McCormick, but reading through his claim is that he was forced out for not going along with taking in people who were undeserving of going into these federal task force. And after a dozen of those, he was pushed out. That's his claim. To me, I'm like, I mean, that sounds about right. That sounds about right. But like, that's what happens, right? That's Game of Thrones. That's normal NYPD procedure to me.
You know what, John? You know what's interesting also? So I'm in contact right now. Michael Osgood, good friend, retired chief, good friend to this podcast, and does some great work also exposing corruption within the NYPD. So Michael Osgood says he was retaliated. Talk about hypocrisy. That he was retaliated in 2018 for an investigation of special victims, and he was transferred to a dead-end position in Patrol Borough, Staten Island. And Essig, former Chief Essig, the same one making the complaint now, played a key role in that retaliation. And guess what? Michael Osgood won that lawsuit. So if you have an opportunity to take a look at that, Essig, also Chief Essig at the time, former Chief Essig, authorized Dermot Shea's son a transfer to the detective squad, and Essig got all his three sons into the detective bureau. And Michael Osgood, I'm going to quote him, says it's the kettle calling the pot black. That's absolutely right. Spot on. So we talk about hypocrisy after hypocrisy. John, what do you think about that? And Michael Osgood is a very credible source.
Again, like I said from the get-go, and I'll keep saying it, there's merits to that claim. They definitely highlighting corruption. They're highlighting a broken system, but there's a ton of hypocrisy in what they're saying, because they have been on the other side of that ball. And maybe I'm not saying that they were selling promotions at $15K a pop. I'm not saying that at all. But, just look what Chief Osgood just told you that. I mean, there's a lot of hypocrisy in a lot of this. In McCormick's lawsuit in particularly, like I said, there's a ton of hypocrisy in it because, you just labeled out something I didn't know. You said that he got his daughter in somewhere with 2 years on. I mean, so she was qualified, but he thought the people that the Crumbs crew were putting in weren't qualified. So now it's arbitrary. It's like, no, dude. I mean, I took a lot of backlash when I posted about Shea's son going to the squad with basically no time on the job, no collars, and people were trying to tell me how great it is to have 20 collars and how he should be on the job and how I was a do nothing and everybody else that, and all this other stuff, and it was great, and Shea was a great police commissioner and all this other nonsense. And I'm like, nobody believes that you should go to the squad with 2 years on the job and 20 collars. And if you do, you're lying. You're lying. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I did anti-crime over 8 years, 9 years. This kid, you're going to tell me that this kid deserved to go ahead of me, deserved to go ahead of you, Eric, all these other guys that do anti-crime, the majority of their career, fight for over a decade to even get third grade detective, never even wind up getting grade or anything like that. And that's why I pulled myself out of that whole nonsense. And I was just like, you know what? Nobody, this job's full of nepotism. This job's full of hypocrisy. It's full of all this bull crap. And I just started taking tests, and look, and they even weaponized the test against you, right? Like, because I would have been a captain, but no, I'm not a captain now. Why? Because I wouldn't deny my religious beliefs, right? I wouldn't, and all these men stood silent. And I believe that they're all Catholic, by the way, and they didn't say a word about it, and they didn't say a word about it. And I think they're all in the Holy Name Society too, which I laugh even further at, because no one said a word about any of that. And then they all were in this circle of nepotism where they did exactly what they were complaining about. So, I to me, I'm like, I see the total hypocrisy in McCormick's complaint. Are there merits there? Yeah, there's merits there, but there are also merits for every other chief that ever existed in the NYPD, that ever made chief, because the same is true for Happenham. This is common NYPD practice, is that you push your circle ahead. Most of the time, they're unqualified, and it's favors. It's either a favor for your buddy or a favor for a chief you want to get in good with, or the police commissioner or somebody else, or it's a favor for you personally. But this is common NYPD practice. And again, all we're hearing is a broken system filled with corruption, filled with nepotism, and the promotion process in the NYPD, especially when it relates to discretionary promotions, is completely broken and needs to be rethought.
Well, I do appreciate this lawsuit coming out right now because it proves, solidifies, validates, and vindicates what I have been saying. Both John and myself have been saying on New York's Financial Title Filter podcast for almost 3 years. And John and I started this podcast together around October, November of 2022. So we're talking about close to 3 years that we've been talking about the appearance of impropriety, the failed administration under Eric Adams. And we were told we're radicals, you're crazy, you guys are at it, you're just bitter. This is the NYPD rant. Is it still? And what it does, it solidifies this, particularly when we talk about the upper management of the NYPD and say, why are we calling them chiefs? Because there's no honor in this. Chief McCormick in particular, we talk about why. I always say, and I've been saying this for a long time, and this is where it validates us. I always say, where is that old white man who's a chief to stand up and talk about the atrocities of the job? And I would always say, go back to other episodes and you'll find it. We can document it. And I've always said it. The reason why they don't is because they're self-serving or they have to pave the way for their offspring. And McCormick's offspring have enjoyed those amenities, particularly McCormick's daughter. I know McCormick's daughter was put into specialized units very early on in her career. I spoke to numerous credible police officers who remain anonymous, who said she was helped and given collars to pepper her record in a positive way and eventually put her in a spot to get detected. I also heard, now this one I can't validate, but I heard the rumor that McCormick's nephew also benefited through amenities through Chief McCormick. And yet, through them being forced out and retaliation, we never said a word, we never heard anything until now. And, yes, is there merits to his case? But do I feel sorry for him? No. And that's why I say I don't feel sorry for any of these chiefs, because I still have that question in the back of my mind. And leave me a comment here in the chat. Tell me what you think. If these 4 chiefs, that's right, Steven. Shout out to you, brother. Steven says self-serving. Steven, that's a great friend to the podcast. Thank you so much for coming to Derek's service. Speaking of also in the chat, not to get totally off, anyone who left coffee and donuts last time, I know there were some substantial ones. I apologize. John apologized. We haven't been able to read them out. There's just so much going on. So if you do leave us coffee and donuts, we really appreciate it. But, it's really interesting what's going on in this case. I don't feel sorry for them, because if they were never forced out, if there was never any pushback, if they received further amenities for their offspring and for themselves, would this lawsuit ever come about? Would they ever say a word? What do you think?
Oh, so just to piggyback on you, do I feel sorry for any of them? Absolutely not. I mean, so I just want to put that out there. We're talking about people with very large pensions.
Exactly.
That do they feel sorry for Maul and Bethel? Anybody feel sorry for Maul and Bethel? I know a few of them personally. So, and I'm gonna say right now, tough shit. I don't feel bad for either any of you guys are more than well off. Oh, you got forced out a few years early. All right, I got forced out about 15 years too early. So how do you feel about that? You know what I mean? And I've interacted with a lot of you. And if I would have moved up the ranks, I'm a lot smarter than you guys, and I would have went further. Sorry. So I mean, but like, do I feel bad for them? Absolutely not. But I think when I read all the lawsuits, when I look at Pontillo's lawsuit, right? I think Pontillo's a very smart guy. I always thought he was. I thought he was a gentleman. I thought that, people saying here, they're all gentlemen. Listen, like I said, everybody, most 99.9% of the people in the NYPD are nice guys. Doesn't mean anything to me. We're not talking about that. We're talking about what's right and what's wrong. We're talking about what happened and what we thought happened and what our opinion on is. I'm not talking about if I think they're a nice guy. Most people that make it through the NYPD are very good people. That's just what it is. Does it mean that they're stand-up people? Does it mean that they're filled with integrity? No, doesn't mean that. Does it mean that they're perfect? No, none of us are perfect. I'm not perfect. Eric's not perfect. We would have made mistakes too if we were there. But when you look at Pontillo's lawsuit, though, Pontillo was in charge of risk management. They then changed it to the Professional Standards Bureau, right? But what his job was to do is look at what risk the NYPD is facing and where they should be better performing and how they're underperforming and what's a danger to the NYPD, particularly as it relates to paying out lawsuit settlements, bad publicity, misuse of taxpayer funds, all of these things, right? So that was his job. So he was tasked with looking at the CRT. John Shell, Kaz Daughtry, Jeff Madry's pet unit, right? So he gets tasked with that, and he writes a report on it, and he says they're not putting their body cameras on, they're performing unconstitutional stops, the vehicle pursuits are no good, and he presents this to Keechant Sewell. Immediately after that meeting, as per the lawsuit, John Shell, the tax sheet. See, I'm just going to refer to him as the tax sheet from now on. The tax sheet, the basketball coach, he comes up and he says, "Why'd you tell her that?" So this is the guy that's running the job now. He wants other chiefs to hide information from the police commission, like he hid his basketball coaching, right? So this is the guy with the most integrity that Jessica Tisch felt needed to be. These guys are back again. Like I can't believe it. How many times are you gonna circle the block, guy? Like it's unbelievable.
He must have the cleanest neighborhood. How many times are they gonna pick up the same garbage? Yeah, you can't hear.
I'm gonna go pick it up myself. It's not gonna.
Well, at this point, it looks like you are the garbage man. I don't know if you're in jail, but the funny part is you know what it looks like? It looks like you got a Danny Terrio shirt and then you were at a club all night and you got pinched, dude. Because you got your open chest. I can't hear you. You're muted again.
No, I'm muted, bro. I got the truck. Talk. I'm muted.
The truck. All right. Speaking of the truck, Jonathan Fredericks, Coffee and Dons. Want to thank you, brother. Great man, was on this podcast. $9.99 says, excuse me. I agree with all the comments. It's nothing new that folks get taken care of. Yeah. We all watched it. I'm curious to see what comes from the lawsuits. I think we're all curious to see what comes out of this. I know we're talking about Pontillo now, but I just want to go back to McCormick because I didn't get a chance to finish on. But when we talk about McCormick, one thing I read in his lawsuit is that he alleges through through political favors through Banks and Mayor Eric Adams that there were cronies, get elite promotions that were not on the up and up, that they were paid for. It's like, woo, yeah, dude, we've been talking about this for the longest time. Wow. I kind of think McCormick was just like, hey, Sue, I'm going to jump in on this and make some money too. That's the big thing. We've all been saying this. And that's why I'm saying, how long did you know about these promotions, huh? Because then what happened? Did your daughter not get one of these elite promotions? Is that what happened? She couldn't get first grade? Now, I heard good rumors that she had some domestics that, John, if me and you had a domestic like that, we'd probably be collared. Is that what happened? She couldn't get first grade? Maybe you didn't pay enough money? I don't know, man. Like I said, these are just rumors. this is just allegations. This is what I'm thinking right here. This is the way it looks. Now, when we talk about Pontillo, I think that's probably the most interesting case out of all four chiefs. So I don't know Pontillo's history of offspring. I'm sure he received some benefits, but it's quite interesting because he was actually making an assessment about CRT with a community response team. So I don't know how much self-promotion is in that. So that's a quite interesting case, talking about particularly vehicle pursuits. And what's interesting also in that, I read the lawsuit about the vehicle pursuits. He identifies a problem as Shell and Madry. And if we go back to the height of the vehicle pursuits, when Shell was driving the motivation for vehicle pursuits as a crime-fighting tactic, Madry then came out showing the vehicle pursuit procedure from the NYPD patrol guide, giving the illusion that here's the policy and we need to fix it. But yet, the allegation is against both. So clearly they were both involved in the vehicle pursuit crime-fighting tactic, but Jeffrey Madry was just a little smarter. I mean, he didn't cheat on his taxes. He just cheated on his wife.
Yeah, so, but the thing with Pontillo is, like, he just was doing his job, right? He gives the report. Shell comes after him. Within hours of giving out that report, Keechan Sewell steps down, and then he's approached by Madry and Shell as per his lawsuit and said, captain, or you're out. Basically pushed him out, and that's what happened. So to me, there's a lot of merits in that lawsuit, a ton. I don't know Pontillo personally. I've interacted with him on the job. I don't know him well. I have interacted with him. Like I said, I thought he was a smart guy. I thought he was a gentleman. Do I think that he's free of any of the circle of nepotism or he's perfect? No, I don't think anybody is. Again, I don't think myself was perfect. I don't think Eric would be perfect. I think all of us are highly flawed individuals. But again, like when I read his lawsuit, I'm like, wow. I'm like, it is really wrong, and it just shows everything that's wrong in the Eric Adams administration. He's showing that not only are these kids going to get themselves hurt, they're going to hurt the public out there, and they're going to hurt the overall perception of the job. And and basically we're just covering it all up. So you could imagine what else is being covered up, like the crime stats, and that's the other thing. Like, none of them are weighing in. They all know about what's going on with the crime stats. They all know what happened during COVID. They all know the true number of personnel, right? They all know all of this. They know numerous corruption allegations that was swept under the rug, every single one of them. And they know a lot of other corruption that they're not letting on to. So do I feel bad for any of them? I don't feel bad for any of them, but I'll say it right now. There's definitely merits to every lawsuit. There is. It just is what it is. Is it a cash grab for them? I don't know. I'm not in their head personally. But again, like I said, they all made a ton of money. Nobody cares about Marlon Bethel, what he lost. Nobody cares about what I lost. Nobody gives a shit. So, like, why would I give a shit about them? We're just speaking facts. I think there's merits. I think it shows that the entire job is corrupted. I think it shows that the Internal Affairs Bureau is corrupted. And it shows that Eric Adams and his cronies run the NYPD like a mafia family. That's what it is. It's the Adams crime family. That's what it is.
John, I know your answer, but I'm going to ask it anyway because I just want you to say it. And I want the chat. I want to know what your thoughts are on this because John and I talked about this a long time. I know exactly what his answer is going to be. And I want to know your thoughts on this. Forget about every law enforcement officer, right? We know the rules. But let's talk about by the way, Joe Ramirez just gave you a shout out, said, John, you're speaking facts. Absolutely. And Joel, how you doing, my brother? Great friend to the podcast. Great friend. Forget about any ranks, but particularly chiefs. Do you think chiefs should be allowed to report corruption? Forget about misconduct. Corruption anonymously. And should there be a timeline? Should they have to report it right away? I think you should definitely, as a chief, I don't even care if there's retaliation that you go into face. Because in most cases, most chiefs are beyond their 20-year mark. And if they can report corruption anonymously, we got a huge problem. If a chief has to report corruption anonymously, huge problem. Do you think any chief should have the right to report corruption anonymously?
Absolutely not. But here's the problem. when they report corruption, they're out. And nothing happens to that corruption. It goes nowhere. Again, we were told that this DOJ wasn't going to be politicized. And here we are. All of these investigations are put on pause. They're all put on pause. Why? Oh, because Eric Adams, oh, he was politically targeted just because, they only went after him because he defrauded the taxpayers out of $10 million in tax funds. He only took for bribes from foreign nations. It was no big deal. He only took hundreds of thousands of dollars in bribes. And God only knows what else he took, but no big deal. And then, you got people in the chat here. I could see the chat a little bit from my phone, but, and someone said, oh, this is only coming out because of the election. Is this the guy you're fighting for? This guy, you're fighting for this dirtbag to be in charge in New York City and his dirtbag friends to continue being charge of the NYPD. This is what you guys are fighting for. And should chiefs have to have integrity? Absolutely. They should be the ones holding the line on the job. They should be setting the bar. They should be the guy that when they saw illegal actions happening, they were the ones that speak out. They were the ones willing to put their career on the line, their own financial pockets. But instead, we have the guy who did nothing, stayed silent, maybe even cheated on their taxes, maybe even lied on a stand, maybe even was involved in numerous corruption scandals, such as on-duty booty, shaking down nightclubs, maybe those people, and they stayed silent. And that's who we have in charge of ensuring integrity in the NYPD. Should chiefs be able to report anonymously? Absolutely not. They should have a pair of nuts in their pants. They should be willing to put it all on the line at that point because they've made enough money. They've gotten enough rank, their pension's high enough where they could speak the truth. And again, it's just they want more of this. They want to be in the Bryant Park security. They want to go on W770 WABC radio with John Katzimatidis and go kiss Chris Ruddy's ass in Newsmax and whoever's in Fox's ass and think that they're somebody and then talk about leadership. Leadership? I haven't seen any of it in over a decade. That's why the NYPD is continuing in a downward direction. That's why New York City's continuing in a downward direction. And New York City is going to remain in a downward direction. And the NYPD is going to remain in a downward direction. Not if Mondani gets elected, including if Eric Adams gets elected, including if Andrew Cuomo gets elected. This is the direction you're going. So all this hype on Zohran Mondani destroying the NYPD, are you listening? Have you heard? Have you watched The Finest Unfiltered? Have you heard what those guys have been telling you? Have you seen what's been happening in New York City and what's been happening in the New York City Police Department? It's going in the same direction. Eric Adams isn't saving this. Eric Adams is steering you underwater. Dov Hiken put out a post yesterday. He said jumping on the bandwagon of Eric Adams is like jumping on the Titanic. And that's exactly what it is. It's the same thing as jumping on with Mondani. It's the same thing. You're asking for more of this. That's all you're asking for. You're asking for that when we do put somebody of integrity up there, they either never make it or they're lucky because they just never had to experience they never had to deal with these politically appointed people in their career. They were just lucky. The NYPD is a big enough organization that it's possible that it could happen. But when you actually put someone up there and they see what the hell's going on, they're out. It's over. And everything's gone.
You know what's interesting, John? So we're going to bring to the stage, of course, Finest Unfiltered family, Marlon Bethel, who is affected by corruption in the NYPD. But before Marlon speaks, I just want to, Marlon, how you doing, my brother? So glad you're here.
Hey, good morning, fellas.
Good
Can you hear
morning.
me?
I hear you loud and clear. Before you go, I just want to read out, and I want to push back. And it comes to my brother with the stamina, and that's Patrick Donahue. You got a lot of stamina, brother. I love you. I'm going to push back on this comment. Patrick Donahue says, to weed out corruption, being able to do so anonymously or using your name has to be options. What the Dream Team has shown us is even a chief can be screwed. I don't want to say the word because of YouTube purposes. What if they go against the message? So you know what? I just don't agree. I got to push back, and I want your thoughts because Marlon, John gave his thoughts on this, and I want to give my thoughts, and I want to hear from you. And Rob Lukash also says, before I give those thoughts on that, Rob, what's up, brother? Rob said that no captain is going to speak out against another captain because of retaliation also. They have to speak out against a lower rank. So it shows that how heavily weighted rank is on this job. But if you're an NYPD chief at the upper echelon, you are the job. I've been saying the job is people. You're the job. If you have to speak out anonymously, well, then it shows that the deep-rooted problems do point to the mayor. So the mayor is important. The mayor is actually the one that's in charge of the police department. That's what you're telling me if they have to report anonymously. So, Marlon, what we spoke about before you got on was we're talking about these lawsuits. We're talking about the 4 chiefs, the hypocrisy that comes out about this lawsuit. But what we're talking about now is, do you think, and forget about pick a rank or whatever you think, I think that no law enforcement officer should be able to report corruption anonymously. But let's not talk about just the boots on the ground, particularly chiefs. Do you think a chief has the right to report corruption anonymously? I don't think so. I think if they have to report anonymously, that shows an even bigger problem.
Marlon, before you go, I'm just gonna grab coffee. My phone's fine. All right. I'm shutting my mic off, my camera off for 1 second. I'm just combobulated this morning, and I need a cup of coffee.
Okay. I can't drink coffee. By the way, dude, I don't know about the chat. I realized I know Juju's always making fun of me for having so much water. I love water, and I love coffee, but I can't drink coffee while I do the podcast, especially 2-3 hours. Then I have to go race to the bathroom. But anyway, what do you think about that, Marlon? I don't think a chief should be allowed to report corruption anonymously. I just don't think so. Even if you go to receive retaliation backlash, if anyone has to stand up against it, it's you. You're the job. You're the one that, when people say, oh, the job sucks, you are the job.
Yeah, well, first, I think coffee's a necessity for doing a morning show. Okay. But yeah.
It's
yeah,
4 o'clock in
I
the morning
agree.
for me, by the way.
I agree 100%. If we have if the problem is so systematic at that level, then where do you start on this? Yeah, I agree with you. Chiefs shouldn't have to report this anonymously. Okay, you're at the upper echelon of the department, but I think it just continues the problem if you're a chief and you're reporting it anonymously, whereas at that point you should be part of the change that gets rid of that systematic problem within the department. I think you're a chief. You need to stand up for a lot of these problems and be the change that the cops are looking for. And it's such a problem in the NYPD that you have the upper leadership kind of skirting their duties as leaders. And we keep seeing that coming back. For the last 3-4 years, 3 years now since Eric Adams has been there, and it's a shame that things have gotten this far. And I have to anytime I see this, I have to wonder like how much more work is it now to clean up the department? Because it's not just like a precinct like back in the old days, like say you have like the Buddy Boy scandal of the 80s, late 80s, or you have Dowd in the 90s. When it gets to the levels of chiefs and with Caban's allegations too, that's like it's just absurd. I remember like months ago we discussed this and you brought up that the whole department should be reformed. Initially, I didn't think we needed to go that far. But when you hear things like this, you can't. There's just no way that we can piecemeal fix this. The whole department needs like reform. And
Go ahead. Sorry, Mom. I know you keep.
No. So yeah.
So I've been examining this lawsuit and analyzing it, right? And I look at the dates, and I think dates tell you a lot. So, according to Pontillo in his lawsuit, that a meeting was held June 2023. Listen to that date, June 2023. That's more than 2 years ago right now, where there were complaints about body camera usage and the crime-fighting tactic of vehicle pursuits when it comes to the citywide response team. When it comes to the case of Veneziano, according to Veneziano in his complaint, that he was forced out of retirement November 2023. That's almost 2 years ago, Marlon. So I've been saying for a long time that every chief on this job is compromised. And I get a lot of shit for it. I'm not going to lie. People have contacted me and told me how some chiefs are compartmentalized and they don't have access to certain things. But with this information going on, we're talking about 2 years. So how much prior before that did these investigations start to brew, particularly with Joseph Veneziano when he was second in command? How long before that did they get knowledge of this and did these investigations commence? And how long did it take before the vehicle pursuits were so out of control that the pattern was observed, that it was so identifiable that Pontillo had to speak up? And in his lawsuit, he actually alleges that after the meeting, that John Shell approached him and said, "Why did you have to tell her?" You know, I know you can't see on your phone, John. By the way, you got a big shout out. Tony Ulrich says we love the carry. He's in jail right now, but we're not going to hold him down. So, you know, I just want, that's why I say that every chief is compromised, because I think this is going on for the entire tenure under Eric Adams and, of course, former, at the time, Deputy Mayor Philip Banks. So, in order to this ferment, every chief has to have some knowledge. To what degree, it's different. Obviously, these three-star chiefs have much more knowledge than maybe a one-star chief. But in order to have this pay for play or potential pay for promotions, there's a lot of round robin, and every unit has to get identified and vetted. So, Marlon, what are your thoughts on me saying that every chief is compromised? Does that still sound crazy or radical?
No. It's 100% right. I mean, think of it. We saw that during the mandate. Okay, during the mandate, how many chiefs just stood by as their personnel were forced to leave, or you know, in my case, get terminated? You know,
That's not fair. That's not fair, Marlon.
Huh?
That's not fair, Marlon. No,
Huh? Yeah. How many?
John,
I mean, just think of it.
I feel like John, by the way, like when I have no Wi-Fi, I'm just like trying to poke something in so I can actually get a word in.
No. That's what they say. Like it's like they pretend like that didn't happen. Like that's what do you mean? What do you mean? I'm faithful. I'm part of the Holy Name Society. I support Marlon. I support you, John. That was wrong. Oh, it was wrong? Really? Because I haven't heard one of you say it publicly. Sorry, Marlon.
No. I was just gonna say that if I was a chief and my personnel are being forced to leave, first of all, it's your personnel, right? It's your team, right? Second of all, this is going to be a problem for you, because now you're short and you have to replace these guys. Okay, so it's a major problem. As a leader, I would have a major issue with that. You know, I would have a major issue. But look how many of them were silent. Is, you know, their guys were forced to leave. And a lot in a lot of crucial roles in the department too.
Here's the thing, though, Marlon. If any of them stood up, they're gone. It's the end of their career. It's over. And that's what happens with any form of corruption. If any of them say anything, it's over. So the way that we breed leadership, even though we don't see any of it, the way that we breed leadership in the NYPD is we cut your ball sack off, we take your ball sack, we throw it in the garbage, and then we tell you can't ever say anything. You're just gonna push. Ever say anything, we're gonna come after you, and we're gonna destroy you. We're gonna destroy your career. You're never gonna get promoted. You're never gonna do anything. Because till today, like honestly, like. It really annoys me, dude. It really, really annoys me. I run into people. I'm here now. I've been running into people for 3 years since I left the job. Everyone privately tells me, John, it was wrong. I support you. That should have never happened to you guys. I'm sorry what happened to Marlon. Where the fuck? Where were you? Where were you? How come you guys didn't say a word? You know what I mean? And to me, that's what it is. It doesn't matter if it's the mandate. It doesn't matter if it's selling promotions for $15,000. It doesn't matter if it's trading overtime for sex. It doesn't matter if they're shaking down bars in business. It doesn't matter if they wind up doing hits. Nobody's going to say anything. Nobody's going to do anything. The system's completely fractured and broken, and it's fractured and broken because we have a corrupt criminal in the mayor's office, and he took his corrupt, incompetent friends and he put them in charge of the largest police department in the world. What these guys are doing now, yes, I can knock them. Do I feel bad for them? No. But the one thing I'll say is what they're doing is they're exposing to the world exactly what we've been saying for 3 years, that this department is loaded with corruption, it's loaded with nepotism, it's loaded with cronyism, and it targets and retaliates against anybody that even pushes back this much.
Spot on, brother. Spot on. That was almost like a sermon right now. You had me. I was like, you know what? Yeah, this is good. Greg Gordon, what's up, brother? In the chat says, a boss, ready? Listen to this. And you know what? I believe it because I spoke to John about things that were said to him. And I think the stuff that was said to John, I don't even think he could say it because of YouTube. Greg Gordon says, a boss looked me in the face and said, stop being ridiculous. Just take the shot. Yeah. Talk about fighting for people. Listen, my case is totally separate, right? I wasn't forced to retire, and I didn't retire because of the vaccination. I retired because I was taunted by an overzealous civilian complaint review board. And every chief on the job knew, because they were signing off on the awards that I was getting, my unit was getting unit citations. I mean, we were getting guns galore in the South Bronx at a PSA 7 special ops. My guys were kicking ass, taking names. And I was told by the LBA, oh, we're going to speak to Ed Caban. Ed Caban at the time was the first step, and we're going to speak to him, but maybe he could do something to dismiss it. Then he told me, oh, no, he said he couldn't do anything. They can't do anything. I said, really? And now looking at it, isn't it amazing? If I would have cheated on my taxes, I could have got promoted. If I was not credible and I provided misleading statements and pled guilty to it, I could have been promoted by rocket fuel. I could have become the deputy mayor of New York City. If I lacked integrity, or if I had offspring on the job, they could have received amenities. I don't feel sorry for these chiefs one bit. I say boo-hoo, boo-hoo. They're bums like everyone else. I've been saying it. All these chiefs are compromised. They're bums too. But exactly, you're right, John. That was almost like a sermon. You know what? I'm glad that they made this lawsuit because it validates everything that we've been saying. Thank you so much. Because, John, where was Chief Pontillo, former chief? Where was Joseph Veneziano? Where was McCormick? Where were these chiefs, John, when our kids were threatened by some idiot who was employed by the NYPD, who they still refused to take a report? Where were they? How come that's not in their lawsuit? That they don't care because it's only about themselves. Marlon, what did anybody tell you about this shot? Did they tell you, hey, kid, just take it?
Marlon, you got no excuse. Your Wi-Fi is working. Let's go.
Yeah. My bosses didn't, but they did. I did have a higher up who asked me, "Am I sure I want to do this?" So to me, that was his way of saying, "You're gonna take this or not?" Yeah. But for me, I didn't really have any pressure from above. It's just that no one seemed to care. And the problem for me, that what really annoys me though, is that when I had thought Chief Galati might have called me to his office when Kufo threatened my career over me questioning the entire situation, and he didn't. But the initial call I got was that they were furious at me because they thought I was disrespectful to him during the conversation. So it would have been nice for him to have called me and heard firsthand the incident, But You know, Kaz gave an interview on AM New York about a day or two ago because they had an article in there, right, about the Adams administration's cooperation with ICE, and Kaz again dropped this quote in there that this might be the fourth or fifth time he's actually said it, but I'm gonna repeat it here because it's the Adams administration motto. He says that it's important to have a seat at the table to see what's on the menu. I think AM New York is missing a word, but to see what's on the menu rather than to be on the menu. And that's the motto of the Adams administration. It's either it's either you comply or you will be punished. Okay. If you comply, you get a seat at the table. Okay, you get to join a nepotism class at 1PP, or if you don't, you're going to be on the menu for being disloyal. And if you've seen the actions of 1PP since Adams got there, you've seen the incidents of retaliation. You've seen how they treated those of us who said no to the mandate. It's and you look at conversely those who have who are part of the program, how they've been rewarded with ranks like every 6 months, or they've been accelerated up the chain by rocket fuel. Okay, that quote is exactly how they've been behaving, and that quote is the model for them.
Hey, Marlon, what about the 4 chiefs that are named in this lawsuit? And this goes for John too. Do you think, or do you know, do you have any knowledge, did these 4, did they get vaccinated? Did they have their vaccination cards? Did they comply?
I'll tell you right now, more than likely not, and more than likely they got exemptions for all their kids. And that's just the fact of the matter. You know what I mean? Like a lot of them. Listen, believe me, I spoke to a lot of people, and a lot of people were not taking that in the beginning, and then they went dead silent. And then they were like, "Oh, you're gonna leave over this? Oh, what? Well, I'm just gonna take it." And I'm like, "These guys ain't taking it." Or they got fake cards. I mean, like 60% of the people did. So it's. But just to go back on Marlon's quote real quick before you answer that, Marlon. That quote, like he's been saying that every interview. Watch every interview. He says that exact quote. It's better to sit down at the table and look at the menu than be on the menu, and that what that is that's a warning. They're telling you don't be on that menu, don't go against this administration. And I'm sorry we can't bring the graphics up, but there's a video I did want to play, and it's Eric Adams, and Eric Adams keeps putting out this rat video. I hate rats. I hate rats. I can't stand rats. We're going to kill these rats. We're going to get rid of these rats. That is a subliminal message. He is not talking about the rats in New York City. He's talking about the people that turned on him and went against his administration. He's talking about me. He's talking about you. He's talking about Marlon. He's talking about the people in this chat. He's saying, you're on the menu. You're on the menu. You're the people that know that I'm involved in a quid pro quo, in numerous quid pro pros now with the Trump administration. Right. And so like that's what they don't want. These guys are wheeling and dealing. It's all for personal gain. These lawsuits highlight it. Now you're not just hearing it from rank and file members. You're not just hearing it from lieutenants. You're hearing it from the top of the top. You're hearing it from the chief of detectives and the chief of the NYPD's basically legal team, the one that dictates policy for the NYPD. You're hearing it from them telling you that there is corruption at the top, that Eric Adams is directly involved in it, and he's ordering retaliation on anyone that goes against it. So that's what it is. You're on the menu, we're on the menu, and Eric Adams hates rats. But the thing that you don't get is he's the biggest rat of them all.
Yeah. Here's my question. Do you think Kaz came up with that on his own? Okay. I
No,
say
that was from
no.
Adams. That was an Adams quote, dude.
Yeah, 100.
That was an Adams quote that he adopted. Kaz doesn't have anything on his own. And even I'll tell you, even go one further. A lot of the stuff that Kaz and Tish say, if you listen real close, you either heard come out of someone's mouth on this podcast, particularly rocket fuel, which we know is Eric consistently says how people get promoted, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're 100%, John. There's no doubt about it that they've adopted so much language for this podcast because they watch it, they breathe it, they sleep shit thinking about this podcast because you know what this lawsuit says, John and Marlon? You know what it says? And I hate to be that guy, but you know what? We're going to take the credit for it. We were right. We were right. They're all compromised. And people always say to me, the job sucks, the job sucks. And I've been saying this for years. And now I think they're saying, you know what? Maybe Eric Dim is right. The job is people. It's the people at the upper echelon that run the job. They suck. That's why the job sucks.
Yeah. So if you're on the job and you hear that phrase now, you think to yourself, man, if I get in that situation, what do I do? What do I do? You know, how do you fight a phrase or a mentality like that? Okay. And the way I say that you get by this is you stick to your integrity, right? You stick to your integrity and you kind of front run their behavior. If you were that chief, let's say you're put in this situation where the job is forcing you to either go along, play along, or you're gonna get punished. I think you should stick to your integrity and follow through with it, because the thing for their quote here makes me. I asked on the tweet that I noted this quote. I asked how far are they willing to go, because if they're willing to go, the further they're willing to go, they're willing to break the law. Okay, and in the end, listen, we've had 3 years of battling this mandate, and it hasn't been easy, but in the end, we're going to win. We're going to win because we still have laws in this country. So no matter if these guys want to work by this mentality, this is a temporary thing, because you still have larger laws in this country that they have to abide by. So then those larger laws eventually going to win out. So my advice to you guys who might be put in these compromising situations is stick to your integrity and follow through in your integrity. Plan for them to retaliate, but stick to your integrity. Their motto is temporary. The laws will be here much longer than they will be. Okay.
So I got a question for you then, in response to that, Marlon, and for John also, because now that these lawsuits have come out public, 4 former chiefs of the NYPD validates this podcast. And obviously, Jessica Tish, as the police commissioner, does not want to validate this podcast because it goes against Eric Adams. So the question is, what does she do? What should she do? What will she do? What are your thoughts?
She's going to do whatever Eric Adams tells her to do, like she's been doing. She's going to point a tax sheet to the chief of department's office. She's going to promote people that are retaliating against anyone that reports corruption. She's going to do whatever Eric Adams tells her to do, which is what she's been doing. And wherever she could keep the image clean, she'll do that. She's been doing a good job of cleaning up the image of the police department. She's been doing a great job of controlling the media. Obviously, it's not Adams controlling the media. I mean, the media was destroying Adams not as much as they did with de Blasio, but a lot more than they are now. And I believe that's directly related to her influence. But she's not going to do anything differently. There's nothing that's different that's going to happen about that. It's business as usual. More than likely, they wind up settling these lawsuits anyway. And from my knowledge, what I heard is that they actually even wanted an offer. They wanted some escarole. They wanted a little money under the table, and they wouldn't even have brought the lawsuit forward. And Eric Adams said absolutely not. That shows how stupid he is. But it's not about changing the department. These lawsuits are not about changing the department. They're not about restoring integrity of the department. They're not about fixing New York City. These lawsuits are totally about, I want what I deserve. That's all it's about. Where like me and Marlon, my and Marlon's fight is a lot different. It's a lot larger than John Macari or Marlon Bethel, right? And so again, like the whole thing is the whole thing smells. The old saying is, right, the fish stinks from the head, right? And that's what's happening here. You're seeing that Eric Adams runs the police department like a mafia family, and absolutely nothing's going to happen differently. Marlon, do you agree? Is anything going to change as a result of these lawsuits?
No, no. It won't happen because because chief of all, their time is limited right now, and they don't know whether they will be there going forward. And I don't think that Tish is courageous enough to begin the change that the department needs. That takes a level of guts that you just don't see in New York politicians these days. You just don't seem to see it. But that's what she should do is clean house, and bring integrity back. But what she will do is, like John says, stick to the program, and it's another day. So
Yeah, I think that we'll hear zero response from Jessica Tisch in regards to these lawsuits. I think we're going to see something now. I'm going to predict and foreshadow that we'll see something come out right now that's going to be so imperative that it's going to deflect from what's going on right now. We're going to see a distraction come out. I don't know what that is, but I'm going to put my money on it. We're going to see a distraction that's going to gear you towards the election and not make an observation on what's going on with these four chiefs. And again, these four chiefs, they're bums too, because what John said is so true. They would have settled this. If there was a payout, they would have settled this case, and they would have never said a word. And this would have never been public, and it would have been something else that's swept under the rug. And John Scola, again, I want to go back to that. Watch his episode with Sal Greco. He talks about how the NYPD does not fix the root of problems. They just treat symptoms. That's exactly what would have happened. There you go. Here's your payment. Shut up. And those guys would have been happy. Because looking at that lawsuit, Serena did a great job putting it out there.
They would have been. And you know what, dude? Not only would they stay quiet, they'd be holding both Eric Adams to save New York City signs.
You just beat me to it. That's exactly what I was going to say. Thank you very much. 100%. Eric Adams, he's great. He paid us. You would have never heard a word about this. He loves old male, pale, stale white guys. My kid just got first grade detective. You know what, John? Maybe that's what's going to happen. Maybe Jessica Tisch will promote McCormick's daughter to first grade. Maybe Essig's son will maybe he'll become deputy commissioner tomorrow. We're going to see a couple promotions by Rocket Fuel. That's what's going to happen. It's going to be hush money.
Or maybe positions in CCRB or some part of the administration for these old chiefs.
I don't know, dude. Honestly, but I will say this. Like I said, I think that there's merit to the lawsuit. You're not going to get me to feel bad for guys with $20,000 a month pensions that stayed silent about everything. It's just like, so I'm sorry if I'm a little cold about it. Like, I just emotionally, I don't give a shit. Like, but like it is wrong what happened to them. So like, I'm not disregarding that there wasn't merits to their lawsuit. I'm just saying I personally don't feel bad for them and don't give a shit. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, personally, I don't care. And there's going to be something else coming down the pipeline. There's going to be another lawsuit that's going to come out soon, and you guys are going to read about. And the corruption that falls in that you're going to read about under the Adams administration, it's very high level. It's involving specialized units. It's involving nepotism, cronyism, and straight up corruption. And when that comes out, you're just going to see again how corrupt Eric Adams and his friends are, and how all the NYPD, and it's spanned over every administration, all four police commissioners, including Jessica Tisch, and no one has done anything about it, and no one has been held accountable, and nobody tried to clean it up. And I'm not going to say anything else about that, but that's going to be dropping shortly. And when you guys see that, you're going to even see, it takes a step even further than what these guys are saying. It goes beyond selling promotions. it goes beyond selling promotions, as if that's not disgusting enough, or sex for overtime. But what these guys are involved in is high level corruption, and it all comes down to this: pay me my money, I want my crumbs. I'm utilizing my buddy who's corruptible, easily corruptible, Eric Adams, in the seat of the mayor, and I'm using every resource I have in the NYPD to enrich myself. And when that comes out, and it'll be out shortly, everyone's head's going to spin. And again, I'm looking at the polls, and I'm saying everyone that's jumping on board with Eric Adams, everyone that's texting me, I'm an idiot, I don't know what I'm talking about, I'm not politically savvy, everybody telling me that, it's all good. These are all my opinions. I stick to them. I could be wrong, I could be right, but this guy's polling in last place. He's the worst mayor in New York City history, and you're begging for him to be the mayor again.
Well, you know what? There's a comment here in the chat on Hunter. I get what you're saying, but I'm going to push back on this. Hunter says Adams played it safe by hiring a nice Jewish lady to be PC. I want to read that again. Adams played it safe by hiring a nice Jewish lady to be PC. Adams didn't put Jessica Tisch in position because she's Jewish, because he never even mentions it. You could have said she's the first Jewish female PC. He put her there because she's part of the elites. She stems from the 43rd richest family in the entire country. That's what it's about. It's about politics, putting her in the position for that family to help Eric Adams get reelected. That's what it's about. You know, everything that we're saying here is spot on. I'm going to go back to it. I don't care if people think I'm heartless, but I'm going to tell you right now, I can care less. I don't shed a tear, not a single emotion for these four chiefs, because they never shed a tear for Marlon being terminated. John, you would have it to retire. I had to retire. All these chiefs tell you, oh, great police work. Oh, we wish you were a cop in the 90s. And not one of them ever stood up for me. But they stood up for John Shell, who cheated on their taxes. They stood up for Eric Adams. They stood up when things were good. But when things got bad, and oh, woe is me, that's when they stood up. So you know what? I have zero. I have this much care for them, because they didn't care when they were threatening the lives of our children. No one said a word. They didn't care.
And Eric, how about the fact that they were all closeted Trump supporters, and they didn't say a word when Sal got terminated for being a Trump supporter, and Roger Stone. And that's why I was laughing. Sid Rosenberg's like, I know cops, and they're Trump supporters. Like, yeah, they're Trump supporters at home. At work, for over 3.5 years, they were like this. No, yeah, Bill de Blasio's great. I love Kamala. I love that. It was so closeted that the Detectives Endowment Association put out a poll thinking that Kamala Harris was going to win the poll so that they could endorse her. And what they found out is that 96% of detectives were backing Trump, and so they never dropped the poll. That's how closeted it was, that they started believing their own cowardice.
Yeah, you're right. You're 100% right. And where was any of these chiefs to talk about the appearance of impropriety, the criminal association that takes place at Casa Fritos, where Sal Greco sounded the horn on? We didn't hear a word about that. None of that. I don't know. I'm looking at the lawsuit right now. I don't see anything about Casa Fritos. I don't see anything about Eric Dim being pushed out with CCRB. I don't see anything about Marlon being terminated. I see nothing about John having to make a decision to retire. I don't see anything. Nothing.
No, and just another thing, like, I almost wasn't even allowed to retire, right? Because they were trying to put it in that they were just going to fire people like myself. So when I said I was going to retire, I called the pension section. They didn't want to give me my numbers. So I make a stink. I'm like, I'm not going to get abused by some loser sergeant that's down there that never did a stitch of police work in their life. So I'm like, no. She's like, I'm going to put my chief on. I was like, yeah, no problem. Give me his number. I'll call him right now. And she was blown away. Like, oh my God, this lieutenant's going to speak to my chief. So she puts me on the phone with this guy, Director John Como. If you're listening to this, I hope you are. You're a jerk off. So she puts me on with him, and he's like, yeah, this is John Como. So I look him up while I'm on the phone with him. This is Chief Como. I'm like, dude, you're not a chief. You're a civilian. Why are you representing that you're a chief? You're a civilian director. You're not a chief on this job. So he's like, yeah, well, I'm a director. I was like, okay. I was like, listen, I want to retire. I'm leaving. Right, I'm being 7 days. I know that my religious exemption is getting denied because I already was told that it was denied days before I got it. So I'm like, am I going to get fired? Nobody could tell me. So I'm like, I want to retire. I go to retire. John Como, like, why do you want to leave? I was like, it's none of your business. I just want to retire. That's it. It's over. Like, this job, the city doesn't support my morals. I'm out. I want to leave. Right? You know what he tells me? Don't be a PUSSY and just take the shot. And so I snap. I'm like, how do you know my private medical information? How do you know mine? He's like, are you threatening me? I'm like, I'm not threatening you at all. I want to know how you know my private medical information. Anyway, long story short, I have to retire the next day. I had to get my numbers by end rounding them through a friend of a friend to do something that would take 2 minutes. I argued with them all day. I called employee relations. I talked to the dude that used to be the SBA vice president, Bob Ganley. He's like, oh, there's nothing we could do here. You know, I reached out to the head of the pension section to let him know what John Cuomo's doing and how they were treating people like myself. Like, I was being treated like a criminal and a piece of garbage. And they didn't want to let me retire because what happens is, what they were doing is they were getting ready to have people sign off that they can never come back if they didn't take the shot, which completely violates all labor law. So everyone that was after me, everyone that came after me, they tried to get them to sign a thing that they can never come back to the police department ever again.
Wow. I that whole pension section. There's the amount of shenanigans that went on during that time frame. But just to go back to Eric's point, it's even worse, Eric. It's even worse. I'll tell you why it's worse right now. Because Ed Caban, when he was here, he was trying to cozy up to Trump when Trump went to the Bronx, I believe. Right? He was trying to cozy up, even as the job said cops couldn't take pictures with Trump, right? And now you have Adams, who's a MAGA guy now. You have Adams, who's visited the White House, right? You have Chell and Kaz posing with Trump and bragging about it, and you see them all trying to cozy up to be Trump guys now, and they watch Sal. They watch Sal every week. And Sal remains terminated for being a Trump supporter. The fact that still happens is just mind-boggling to me. It's just mind-boggling.
I think I don't want to interrupt you, but I just want to say, Mom, Rob Lukash has a great comment in regards to that. Not to mention the pension section was working from home.
Yeah.
Home.
Hey, John, you're muted.
Yeah, working from home. Unbelievable. I'm just, dude, and I'm just disgusted. Like, I'm just totally disgusted with the whole thing. You guys got anything else on the lawsuit? You guys want to talk about Epstein a little bit? Because that's.
I just want to ask real quick. Was that sergeant a piece of shit, Kathleen Russell?
It was absolutely. I couldn't remember her name. It was Kathleen Russell. She would not give me my numbers. She would not give me my numbers. And then this guy Como calls me a PUSSY. And I'm like, I'm telling you, I was like, in my head, I'm like, I should just go down there and smack him in his face but he was working from home, so I couldn't even do that. Right. And like, and I'm like, I was literally like, wow, I'm going to get fired because I'm holding on to my religious beliefs, and I was like, this is sick, man. This is totally sick. And so yeah, so there are a bunch of closeted Trump supporters, a bunch of closeted anti-vaxxers, a bunch of closeted anti-corruption fighters, right? And now everybody's big and bad when it's time to get paid, but where are you? Like, where are you? You should be doing hits on media. You should be letting everybody know what happened. There should have been criminal investigations involved already. And unfortunately, there really is no way to turn to, dude. What I'm seeing is there is no DOJ. There's no Eastern District, Southern District. When they catch politically connected figures up on performing corruption, taking bribes from foreign nations, selling city services, pocketing the money for themselves, doesn't matter because what it is like the Democrats and the Republicans, they don't give a shit, dude. Neither of them. They're horrible. Honestly, people are like telling me that I'm anti-Trump now. I'm like, no, I'm not anti-Trump. I voted for the guy 3 times. His administration has done everything that it said it wasn't going to do. And one, it was like it was going to go after government inefficiency. but it never looked at New York, which is the most inefficient government there is in the United States of America. It was going to go after political corruption, but it allowed political corruption in New York City. It was going to stop these omnibus bills, and we just seen the big, beautiful bill, which is really the bill is way too big and not so beautiful. And there's a lot of good things in it, but there's a ton of bad stuff in it. And that bill should have never got passed. So I don't think that was an accomplishment. I don't think it was a good thing. And then, when you look at like, oh, these guys should have reported to the FBI. Yeah, why? What did it matter? They were investigating all of this already. Where'd that go? All that stuff's on pause. So like, where do you go? Like, what we're seeing is that there's elites. Eric Adams is in the elite, even though he's a corrupt, incompetent idiot. And it doesn't matter. Like he'll continue to skate and not go to jail. And everyone that just stays silent and sits at the table instead of being on the menu, they'll be rewarded. And that's it.
Yeah. I just like to point out that again, Tish was put there, like John says, because she's an elite, and just to let you guys know, Tucker, the guy who runs the FDNY, is also from the Police Foundation, and he's another elite. So that shows you the kind of mind frame that this administration is in.
And remember, Tish grew up in New York City. You know who else grew up in New York City? Ivanka Trump. Where do you think they went to school? I wonder if they graduated the same years together. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was saying, Marlon. Her being put in that position had nothing to do with DEI, had nothing to do with her being the first female Jewish police commissioner, because that's never publicly spoken about. Never. We never heard Adams once come out of his mouth and say, hey, we got the first female police commissioner who also happens to be Jewish. No, but she is from the 43rd richest family in the entire country. She is an elite. I mean, we talk about she's part of the 1% in the entire country. Yeah, Ivanka Trump did go to school in New York. They grew up in New York. So I'm sure there's a relationship there. Look, we have covered a lot of stuff. And again, I don't mean this on heartless, but it's true. Do I feel bad for them? And I'm going to stand my position. And we've all said it. I don't think any chief, because you are the job, you implement policy, you can change the patrol guide, should ever report corruption anonymously. That to me shows that this entire system is broken. And when we say that Internal Affairs should be outfitted in its own independent watchdog, that solidifies it right there. The Civilian Complaint Review Board, and I think Jim Walden is spot on, has it right on target of what the Civilian Complaint Review Board should look like and being more interceptive into the police department. But Internal Affairs cannot be trusted. And these chiefs want you to believe, oh, these poor chiefs, they're pushed down and they're suppressed and there's nothing they can do. Really? When they were on the job, they were henchmen. They could run it anyway. But now, because it didn't serve their own self-serving needs, they wanted to speak out. I think this is disgusting, honestly. Watching these bums. Disgusting.
Yeah, and just one more point on that, like I get a lot of calls and a lot of texts and a lot of like DMs and stuff from active cops on the job telling me about corruption, telling me about like the plight that they're in. And I tell all of them what Marlon said. Like, I'm like, listen, keep your head down. You're a young guy. They're going to destroy you. Your career's over. I got a call the other day. It was like about 2 weeks ago from like a women's group, mothers. They're mothers of cops. And they're concerned about how the NYPD is treating their sons, how their sons are being assaulted. The perpetrators aren't even getting charged with assault on POs, even though they have serious injuries, stitches, all this other stuff. And they've reached out to the unions, no responses. They've reached out to the mayor's office, no responses. They reached out to the chief of department's office, no responses. And they're like, hey, listen, we want to do a rally. We want to do this. And I told them all the same thing. I'm like, listen, if you guys want to rally, I'll help you. If you guys want media attention, I'll help you. But I guarantee you this, your son's career is over. It's over. So while I agree with you, Eric, that like, oh, as a police officer, you shouldn't be able to report anonymously, or especially if you're in the rank of chief, you shouldn't be able to report anonymously. The thing is, like, there's no system in place to actually even report corruption at all. So I've been telling people now, don't even report it, because I'm like, your career's over. your career's over. They're coming after you. It's
That's
over.
true.
Like your
That's
money
true.
making scheme. And not only is your career over, your future's over too, because they're going to do exactly what they did to me, exactly what they did to you guys. They're going to blackball you in everything you do in the future. They're going to file anonymous complaints on you. They're going to make up lies about you. They're going to target you. They're going to get your house swatted. Like, they're going to do anything they can to keep their foot on your neck. And to make sure you don't get ahead in life. They're going to tell everybody you're a racist, you're a sexist, you're anti-immigrant, you're pro-immigrant, you're a right-wing extremist, you're a left-wing extremist. They're going to make up every lie they can. They're going to paint you as everything in the book. And it really is a sad state of affairs. And honestly, as much as we're knocking these chiefs now, it really is the only recourse of action that they have, in my opinion. And on the other end of it, they confirmed everything they did. So I got to give a little kudos to them for even going ahead with it.
Yeah, and confirmed everything we've been talking about for the last couple of years. So
Yeah, listen, in that aspect of it, I gotta say that aspect I actually have some gratitude because hey, thank you so much for coming out with this self-serving lawsuit that you just vindicated this podcast. We were called radicals. We were called racist. You guys are insane. It's the NYPD rant. You're just bitter. Really? You have chiefs who are too terrified to speak out, that they have to speak out in retirement. And yet, John and myself, who were supporting the rank and file and even tried to help the khaki pants from the outlash from these vehicle pursuits, our kids were threatened and no one said a word. No one said a word. And yeah, and then I was, when my son was at the height of battling cancer, I was supposed to reach out to this family. Really? I mean, isn't that hypocrisy itself? And that's why, that was part of the reason I kept quiet so long, because do they really care? They really care? Because listen, honestly, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like I've always was like kind of against body cameras, but I'm for more body cameras now. I think that every chief should be required to wear body cameras all day, every day. Every phone call they take, on duty, off duty, wear a body camera for transparency, because it was supposed to bring down corruption. And from the inception of body cameras to now, we've only seen corruption rise an exorbitant amount in the NYPD. And it's not from the rank and file who continue to get blamed for all of this nonsense that's happening all the way up top.
Mom, what do you got, Mom? What do you got in that tomb?
Oh, nah, it's just coffee. I don't have my usual flask today. Yeah.
got a flask.
Coffee is a must for morning shows. You gotta have your coffee.
Yeah. No. I drink black coffee, but I've been drinking mushroom coffee lately, and it's
mushroom coffee is pretty good, actually.
It's really good, actually. I love it.
Yeah.
It's not really good tasting, but I like the way it makes me feel. So I don't recommend the taste of it, but I think it's good. It doesn't give you the jitters. But you guys want to get on Epstein, or you want to get out of here? We've been going almost 2 hours.
No, we could talk about Epstein. Actually, Epstein relates to all of this. It's all related, by the way.
Yeah,
and the frustration is all related to this too. So we watched Dan Bongino, whose platform, and Kash Patel, basically they grew their base and they grew their platform talking about Jeffrey Epstein, talking about their sources, their intel. They have this is going to break. When Trump gets in, he's going to reveal everything. We had a president tell you that he was going to, his was more cryptic, but he did say they were going to release everything. They were going to get you everything. Pam Bondi most recently said that she had an Epstein black book on her desk and was going through it, and they were going to release it, even though you were told day one. Numerous MAGA social media influencers told you were going to get it. It's coming, it's coming, it's coming. We all remember the infamous binders they put out, which was nothing. And now it comes out the other day that Epstein, there is no black book. Nobody was blackmailed, and Epstein didn't commit suicide. He killed himself, which directly conflicts with everything Dan Bongino, Kash Patel, all the MAGA conservative influencers have been telling you. So when you go online now, you see a couple of people. You see a couple of people with a bunch of fake outrage, in my opinion, because they're not calling out Trump.
You have some that are going directly at Pam Bondi. So I think that that's showing that Pam Bondi's on her way out, because they're all these same MAGA influences are saying Pam Bondi, never mention Trump. Then they're saying they lied to us. That's another one. They lied to us. Never mention Trump. They never talk about him. They never bring him up. Then you have the other guys saying, no, they actually have the black book, but Trump, he's going to use it to blackmail the deep state. I mean, those people, I'm just like, I don't even know where you come from at all. And then you actually have people that are highly upset about it, and they're like, you know, this is wrong. We were told we were going to get all this stuff, and here we are. And it's the same charade that we were getting with the Democrats. Like, nothing's actually different. And I think it's questionable that you're all involved in it, because you all were covered up. That's why it didn't come out under Donald Trump, and that's why it didn't come out under Joe Biden, because you're all tied in some way and you're all covering for each other, right? And I think that's a fair criticism, right? But then the other thing is, like, that nobody talks about is, well, was this whole MAGA brand built on just hype and lies? Like, was everything that Dan Bongino told you just a hype, just a lie? All his sources were nonsense. All his intel was BS. And it was just all entertainment to capture an audience, to flow in the trending news. And now you just learned that he's full of garbage. Kash Patel's full of garbage. And that, yeah, Jeffrey Epstein had all this stuff, but there really wasn't that much going on, which is also possible, but doesn't explain why was he in jail for sex trafficking, and why is Ghislaine Maxwell still in jail for sex trafficking if there are no people that they sex traffic these people to. And yet we were told there were thousands and thousands of horrible videos detailing out these horrible acts. Are we to believe that it was only Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell partaking in this while he was flying people out to his island? And honestly, it's just, in my opinion, it's just another broken promise of this administration. And it really is it is starting to show you that it's fractured, and MAGA is full of shit.
I think there's a great comment here from our brother Steven. Steven S., great friend to the podcast. He says, Bongino is scared. The question is why? I smell a Mossad CIA operation lead to Israel and so cover up. Remember the Liberty. Remember JFK. What else to say? Remember Pearl Harbor. Remember the Maine. I mean, that's a great comment. You're right. And you know, going back to that, if Bongino is scared, it kind of emulates what we're talking about, you know, with the NYPD. Well, who do you speak to? I mean, because his position before he was director was far different. It was a complete 180 from what he's saying right now. And he was a lot more confident before than he is now. It's funny how before, when he's independent and just doing media, his confidence and in comparison to now, he says it, but he says it so much more meek and timid. So these are great questions, a great comments, Stephen. I agree with you. I think, you know, some people in the chat are saying that Trump is not on those files. Some people are saying that he is. Well, you know what? Well, that's the whole point. Transparency. Put out all the documents you have. Put out all the files. If he's on it, so be it. And if he's not, well, then it clears it up. Why would we want those questions brewing and fermenting in the public's eyes right now, especially at the height of this presidency, especially at the questions that everyone has about this case? Because, John, you make a great point. She is still in jail. She is still in jail. You're 100% right.
You know, before Trump got there, I always thought that, you know, a businessman who's a billionaire, right, would be the perfect president because he doesn't need the money. You know, he doesn't need the influence. Problem with that, though, is the more money you have, the more businesses you have, the more you have to lose. So I don't know if he's compromised or anything, but that is something that we have to think about, you know, because it's like Sal said in his tweet. Sal said that certain podcasters, and I'll add politicians too, because Trump kind of did build his rep on this. He says certain podcasters that built large bank accounts demanding transparency and accountability on this issue promised when becoming government officials transparency and accountability are now giving conflicting public statements on this issue. He's spot on. The people like Trump and Bongino and Cash and Pam Bondi, before they got there, were telling you, even after, to an extent, the public themselves had given up on the Epstein issue because we thought, we're just not going to get any sort of transparency certainly from the Biden administration. But here it is. They had made it a campaign issue and made it one of their issues as figures in the public, in media, right? And Trump on the campaign. They made it an issue themselves for them. And so now they're in the seats of power, and they're trying to sweep it all under the rug now. It's absolutely absurd. It's absurd. And something else. I had a conversation with a family member yesterday, and he got me thinking. And I'm struggling with this question. It's that whether Trump and MAGA, as we were told we were going to get, was just perception management and myth building itself. And I gotta say, with all that's going on, I'm really struggling with that right now, because it's not, it's not looking like we're getting the product that we paid for.
No,
well, I just gotta say before John goes, I love when you use that terminology about myth building. I think every time you say myth building, I think Cat's in the Captain America chair.
No, dude, it's totally like everything that I've been witnessing is horrific. It's honestly horrific, It's just another lie. It's like, all right, was it all garbage? I was never big on the Epstein thing ever. Like, I just never really followed it. I didn't care. I was like with you, like, we're never gonna get told. I personally think they're all a bunch of sexual corrupt demons who all party together and do terrible things that most of us would never partake in or want to partake in. So that's my opinion on elites and the celebrities and the billionaires and all those people. I don't think that, I'm not saying every single one of them, but the majority of them are not good people. And I think that's been proven. And I think whether Trump was there or not really doesn't matter. Obviously, there are people that were there or that nobody wants to know. There were high people that they don't want to come out, whoever it is, whether they're covering for themselves or their friends, somebody they're in business with, whatever it is. That's what's happening. You know what I mean? And then the other thing, when you relate it to like mine and Marlon's situation, right? We were told that this administration was going to right the wrongs of the COVID mandates, right? And so what happens? The poster child for the COVID mandates and the poster child for illegal immigration, Eric Adams, he gets his case dropped. They just drop it. They're like, oh, yeah, no. He was politically targeted. And then instead of putting like disclaimers on that, and Trump actually went on record and said, oh yeah, I helped him out, quid pro quo. Trump, not too smart. So when we lose the midterms, and when we lose the midterms, which we're going to, they're going to impeach him, and they're going to do it based upon numerous quid pro quos. That's just one of them that happened with Eric Adams. But the other one I just can't get out of my head is, Trump got the Bally's bid. Eric Adams got the Trump organization, the Bally's organization, back on a bid to build a casino in the Bronx, right? And so, like, there was strong Republican support against it, and I think but like Adams came out and he pushed the home rule on that, right? Why did he push the home rule on that? Because guess what? Big Daddy gave him a buzz, right? So he pushes the home rule in it. Why he's getting involved in building casinos that directly help the Trump organization, people should be scratching their head, right? So he does that. He goes out and he implements this home rule. So now you need less votes, right? Now you need less votes to have that bill come through or to get these people back on the bid. Now, all the Republicans were strong against it. What happens is, when Adams gets involved, Ina Vernikoff doesn't go hang out with the Republicans. And then what happens? 4 days later, she gets an endorsement from who? Not Big Daddy Trump, but from Don Jr. So to me, I don't know that she sold her vote out for an endorsement, but that's what it looks like. And if that's the case, she sold her vote out for a Don Jr. endorsement, which I don't know how much weight that carries in New York City, but she got that endorsement, and that's another quid pro quo. And it's like it's all the same shit that was happening in the Biden administration. It's like it's just more corruption, and it's even worse now because the favors that are getting called in aren't to benefit the American people. They're to benefit themselves and their own pockets, which is the same thing that we're talking about in the NYPD. Why do they cover up corruption in the NYPD? To protect themselves and protect their friends and protect their children and protect their pockets and protect their legacy down the road and all that stuff. And it's the same thing occurring here when we relate it to Epstein or every other form of corruption that's occurring. All it is everything looks like a game.
Yeah. This whole thing about their self interest, and self interest above like the interests of the NYPD, the institution itself, and self interest above the welfare of the country it's very disheartening. It's very disheartening because people need to understand that the well-being, I said this many times, we've come to a point in history where the well-being of the country is to the interest of the people who have businesses and who are elites in this country, because again, like you have China, we're no longer just the only superpower in the world anymore. Okay, there's the Chinese are hungry for the prosperity that America has built up. So by letting your community and your city and your country deteriorate like this, you're just creating a space in the market for competitor like them to continue building up their society and building up their people, you know and it's just not healthy for the long term. It's not good for the long term health of this country, and I wish people would wake up and see that they need to they need to put country and city and the institution ahead of their own self-interest for the future.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, something we used to say in the Marines, and it kind of like just came up in my mind while you're saying that. I used to always say, God, country, core. And it's the same thing, right? God, country, core is the people, right? It's God, country, people, right? We should praise God, we should praise the country, and we should praise the people. But if you're China and you're Russia, you're looking right now, I don't have to kill my enemy. My enemy is killing itself. This country, right, is eating itself from within. And it's the elites that the 1% at the top that they're eating well, and everyone else is just like trying to get just little breadcrumbs just to stay alive and survive.
Yeah, and they have all their fluffers around, the Eric Adams of the world and the social media influencers. They're all like, can I sit outside your party? Like that's, I want to go to Epstein Island with you. I'll do that, So I put out a poll yesterday.
Can I go to a kitty party?
I put out a poll yesterday, and it's really tough. Like, who do you think, like, if you had to pick, who's most likely to have attended an event at Epstein Island and a Diddy freak-off? Anthony Weiner, Eric Adams, Andrew Cuomo. I forget the fourth guy. But those three are hard, right? Because I was like, I don't know, man. It could be all three of them. Like, I was like, I don't know. Like, who's most likely to have attended? I'm like, I think all three of them. It's a hard one.
I'm going to take Anthony Weiner off that. He's more into, like, self-promotion. He's more into, like, his selfies. So I'm going to go with the other ones.
Greg Gordon says all three. Steven has all three. Like, and I put my last one was write in whoever you think. But like, and think about that. Those guys are still floating around as names in New York City politics. Cuomo, disgraced mayor. Adams, disgraced governor. Weiner, disgraced city councilman. Right? Like it's like it's disgusting. Like it's all of them. I was like, wow. I was like, that's a really question that I don't know the answer to. I just go with Adams only because I know he had a close relationship with Diddy. But like they were probably all on Epstein Island together, and there's a possibility that Cuomo and Wiener were hanging out with Diddy too. So, but there's just too many ties there to like really say one or the other. You know, there's it could, yeah, exactly. There should be I should have put the other choice, all of the above. Last thing I think before we get out of here, because we're going long, but last thing today, Eric Adams is set to announce a mask ban. Now, just think of the hypocrisy in this, right? For 2 years, since October 7, 2023, ever since that date, New York City has been captured by illegal activists, not protests, right? There's been numerous protests that were legal, but there's been numerous protests that have turned illegal. They have critical shutdowns of infrastructure planned, paid agitators coming in here, assaults, property damage, all of this insane, shutting down mass transit, all of this stuff, shutting down traffic and people's inability to walk, not allowing Jewish students to go to school. And all these individuals have been masked, right? And for 2 years, Mike Riley in the state assembly has been pushing a bill in the assembly, as well as Joanne Ariola, who's now the minority leader in city council, was pushing a mask ban bill in city council. You know what Eric Adams said about it? Nothing. He was never on any of those bills. He's not even acknowledging those bills. He never acknowledged them. What he did was he signed on to the protest settlement agreement, which emasculated the NYPD's response to properly manage and police these protests and prevent them from turning illegal and having to make an arrest and having the city to pay out all these lawsuits. What he did was say, okay, yeah, you guys can't do this, and we're going to give these agitators our entire playbook. But now that he's running for re-election, now he's saying, oh yeah, I want to put a mask bill, and they're presenting this like this is his own idea, when there's 2 bills, one in the assembly and one in the city council, that he has ignored for 2 years. But now, because we're a couple of months away from an election, he wants you to believe that he's MAGA, that he's smart, that he finally came to his common senses, and he's going to ignore that there's 2 pieces of legislation already out there that he's done nothing with, absolutely nothing with, and he's going to pretend like this is his own brilliant idea. And by the way, the mayor doesn't create legislation. He could vie for it, but he doesn't create it. But now he's going to call on Albany to do it. It's a complete, utter joke. More perception management. Eric, what do you think about Eric Adams? I just got this great idea, guys.
Eric, you're muted.
Oh, I thought you were taking a stab at it. Okay.
Oh no, yeah, I thought John asked you first. Yeah.
No. Listen. No, you're right. It's no surprise, right? It goes back to what we've been saying the entire tenure of Mayor Eric Adams. Who is Mayor Eric Adams? What is he for? What is he against? We don't know, because anything he's for is what's going to get him reelected. Anything he's against was when he got elected at the beginning, where he could be the real Eric Adams, which was the Biden of Brooklyn. So no surprise by this. No surprise by this. So I just wanted to laugh. I thought you would think this is funny, Marlon, but we're talking about this whole Diddy case at Epstein, right? But who had to benefit from this whole Diddy case, right? All those Johnson & Johnson baby oil bottles. Who's the largest shareholder groups behind Johnson & Johnson baby oil? Vanguard, BlackRock. Who has special interest in New York? Vanguard, BlackRock. This all ties together. You know, it's funny, right, John? Because I used to say, man, it's a shame. You know, I didn't know how much I want to talk about politics, but you realize when it comes to policing and anything in New York City, it's all centric around politics. I think, John, you said it. Politics is everything. Kind of think you're right.
Yeah, absolutely. You cannot avoid talking about politics and policing. Eventually, it intersects with it, and you have no choice. You know, I hear people on a lot of these podcasts saying I don't want to talk about politics, but you can't avoid it. You can't avoid it. There's so much of it shapes our lives nowadays, and so much of policy from police executives is politics. It's politics. We've said numerous times on this show that like the NYPD in particular needs to go back to its core mission of being a police department rather than like a advocacy organization or just pushing all these progressive stuff that they do. You need to go back to policing. What happened to just being a police department, and not being involved in all these political stuff, But I'd like to point out that this election year stunting by Adams is we're gonna see more of it, because we're in desperation hour right now with him so far down in the polls. We're gonna see more of it. You see that also in the news that he got a new campaign manager. So I expect them to do things a lot differently just to try to play catch up in the polls. So expect more of this as we go forward in the coming months.
Yeah, and just I can't stand when I talk to people and they're like, "Oh, you're too political, bro. I don't want to talk politics." And I'm like, then, but there's nothing to talk about. Like, what do you want to come on the podcast for? You don't want to talk politics? Like everything in your life is affected by politics. Why was Marlon and I forced out of our careers? Politics. Why was Eric forced out of his career? Politics. Why was Sal Greco forced out of his career? Politics. Why were you forced to put something in your body you didn't want? Politics. Why were you forced to stand 5 feet apart from people? Politics. Why was your city flooded with illegal immigrants? Politics. Why was $12 billion of your tax dollars flooded there? Politics. Why is the New York City Police Department bleeding out people as we sit here right now? There's people resigning and retiring as we sit here right now. Why? Politics. Why is your city unsafe? Politics. Bail reform. This, that, the other thing. Why is there a tax cheat in charge of the NYPD? Politics. Why was there a sexual deviant in charge of the NYPD prior to that? Politics. Right? It's like it literally is every single thing in your life. And it's either you turn a blind eye to it and you're going to say, "Oh, I'm not telling you to go Team MAGA or Team Kamala. I'm not telling you that at all. What I'm telling you is observe and watch what your politicians are doing. It's our job as Americans to hold them accountable, whether it's Donald Trump, whether it's Kamala Harris, whether it's Eric Adams, whether it's Curtis Sliwa. Our job is to hold the people that told us, vote for me and I'm going to do X, Y, Z, is to hold them accountable. That's what it is. That's the founding of this nation. Didn't matter the rich, you're smart, you're not smart. I mean, and like, so to me, it's like, I laugh all the time when people are like, "Oh yeah, no, you're too political. You're too political. I'm not going to talk politics with you." I'm like, then let's not talk. Everyone's like so skittish to even talk to me about anything because they feel like everything that with me is going to be political. But at the end of the day, everything you're bringing up to me is political, right?
Hey, John, I got one question. What about Shark Week? Is that politics?
Shark Week's politics too. I mean, look at this idiot, dude. Look at this idiot. We're back to Kaz Daughtry getting a hard on and rushing out on social media about someone finding a shark in its natural habitat. Do you know what happens in Jersey when there's a shark 100 feet off the shore in Florida? Their beaches don't get closed. They just put up a flag and say that there's marine life in the water because that's what it is. Like, that's where they live, Kaz. The sharks live in the water. I'm in the beach often. I'm in the water often. I've encountered sharks. I've encountered manatees. I've encountered dolphins. That's where they live. You don't shut down beaches. And now you have this idiot shutting down beach after beach every day in New York City because they observed a shark 1,000 yards out of the water, nowhere near the shore, exactly where they live. It's like, dude, are you kidding me? Politics. Why is Kaz Daughtry a deputy mayor? Politics.
Wait, hold on, I'm confused. So you're saying that sharks live in the water? Okay. So I know. I didn't know. I got that.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think about fish?
Politics. There's a saying that politics is downstream culture. And if I alluded to last episode we were on, we briefly talked about that new movie coming out, that new Superman movie, right? And I mentioned on there about how that relates to culture and how this all ties back into everything that we talk about, because because politics has just infected everything everything now. So you can watch reviews about movies, and eventually they're going to talk about politics, because the politics have infected the movies, right? And the movies have become like a platform to preach a message to you, right? And that's the case when I watch guys talk about economics now. Guys talk about everything. Everything is just a message now, and it's all politics. You have manufacturers who make. Remember a couple months ago that Jaguar came out with a woke ad. You have companies that make products for you, right? They can't just make products for you. They have to preach a message too, right? Here you have a police department. We can't just police, we can't just police. We gotta preach a message to you also. We have to be entwined with the politics now. So it's politics is downstream of culture, and everything about culture now has been infected to preach to you, and to send a message to you, to broadcast a message to you. So it's unavoidable. It's completely unavoidable now.
Absolutely. Look at you talk about everything's politics, right? If you're in the restaurant business, you have to virtue signal to the entire community, to the entire police department, to the entire city that you support Pride Month. Because when it comes to Pride Month, all of a sudden every restaurant has a Pride Month sticker or a Pride Month banner. Some are bigger than others. Do you support it all year? I mean, why is it just 1 month? We just see virtue signaling, because those flags, they come up and then they come down. So I think we identified that everything is politics. Here we are, 2 hours and 15 minutes into it. We apologize for coming on late, but we made it through. Great topic. I'm sorry. I don't feel sorry for the Chiefs. I have gratitude that they solidified and validated this podcast and everything we've been saying, along with our friends and listeners that have engaged in this topic. And we're not happy seeing what the corruption going on, and we need a fix, and we need it now.
Just a last comment before we get out of here. Greg Gordon, give us a date when you're free so we can have you on. Everybody needs to hear about the infamous cop who was dancing at the West Indian Parade. And the same guy that I think you made a Facebook message about Charlene McRae, too, if I'm not mistaken. And you got a little trouble for that, too. So we won't want to hear your story, so get on with us. But Greg Gordon says, wait a minute, how could there be a mask ban? I thought masks were mandated to protect against COVID, just like the vax. It kept us safe. Oh, wait. Exactly. And that was the other point that we were pushing. We were saying how crime's going to rise because you're telling people to wear a mask, and they were almost trying to make it illegal to not wear a mask. And guess who was doing it? The moron who's the mayor right now. Right? He was teaching you how to make masks. He was calling people like myself criminal if I wanted to go jogging without wearing a mask, if I wanted to work out, if I wanted to stand by the seashore and breathe the fresh air. There was something wrong with me, and I was a danger. And now this idiot went from that to this. This is what we're dealing with. Great comment. Thanks for weighing in. Let's definitely set up a show together. We'll get that one going.
John, what was that mask that was really effective? The invisible one. I think that worked the best.
Oh, the sheriff's mask. Sheriff Anthony Miranda, he invented the invisible mask while he was shutting businesses down. And what it was a card, and you just put it on your lapel or on your pocket, and it kept you safe from COVID. Unbelievable. And he's the sheriff of New York City right now. Great guy, ton of integrity. He just has a problem vouchering cash and drugs that he seizes. But other than that, everything's good. Everything's on the up and up. Don't worry about it.
I think Greg Gordon didn't have the pocket mask. I think that was, Greg, you need that invisible pocket mask. You missed out, brother.
Yeah. How's this mask ban going to work when there are still people who wear the mask because of the whatever new strain of the bug that the media wants to broadcast today is constantly being told to us that there's that is here. How's that going to work?
You're going to get some kids, young kids, because they're so confused. They don't even know what they're doing out there. They're running around. They're going to beat up grandma and arrest her for wearing a mask. That's how it's going to work. You're going to see the dumbest shit happen, and the numerous lawsuits happen as a result of this. Because at the end of the day, you could wear a mask, and that's what's going to happen. You're going to see these young cops go out there, rah, 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 rah. John Shell's going to be, we're not having it no more. We're not going to take this no more. And grandma's going to be walking with a stroller, and some kid's going to run out and tackle her, and they're going to arrest her, and they're going to deny her DAT. Case is going to get thrown out. She's going to sue for millions and win, as she should. And that's what's going to happen. It's like the whole thing's nonsense. But at the end of the day, it's not even going through. This is just perception management. This is just Eric Adams looking for something in the media this week. Next week, it'll be something else. That's all it is. It's not even actually happening.
Well, that's what pisses me off about this whole thing. It's like, I've been getting texts from people also. Oh, look, Eric Adams says he's got a plan. He's going to reinstate the workers that are unvaccinated. I go, wait a minute. Why does he need a plan? Why does he have to document? He's the mayor right now. Why don't he just reinstate them? Are you kidding me? Are you buying this bullshit?
Yeah.
Unbelievable. Yeah, we cursed a lot this episode. Sorry, but I'm out of my natural element from behind the computer. So it was like I felt more free.
You're like a shark, John. You're not in your water right now.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I think I do have a drone over the house though. So
you probably do. Maybe that Sergeant Detective Squad Travis Rutherford, who's so intelligent in Group 1. Maybe he's looking out for you right now. Travis Rutherford, I just want to say hello. You are impressive, super intelligent. Thank you so much for being in charge of our case. Really appreciate it.
He's awesome. Yeah. Group Special Investigation Unit is awesome. Group 1, they've been doing a great job. Shout out to you guys. You guys are the original fluffers. They're the original crew of fluffers. You guys are like that right now. Oh my God! By the way, Group 1, they're telling about what you guys are doing. Oh my God!
Yeah, can we get an update, please? Group 1, can we get an update? I haven't heard from you in a while. I just want to know, like, John, I feel like your case was solved. Like they came, but I was in Malaysia at the time we were threatened. Like, who do I call? Can you tell me? Should I notify the Malaysian?
They don't know. They still haven't figured that out. They still haven't figured it out. You know why? Because it results back to they were supposed to take all roads lead back to them. That's why they haven't figured it out. They can't answer that.
I'm gonna call. Yeah, can you help me out here? Like, what?
No, you any day now, Malaysian police are gonna come knocking on your trailer. Yeah. Travis is probably still on the phone with 911 from Malaysia. He's waiting for the translator to come.
Travis is gonna get promoted to lieutenant off this case. Congratulations, Travis.
No, it's great, all of them, and that goes for all of you guys I know in Group 1 too. You guys are fluffers too, so I'm just letting you know. That's what your job is now. You're not a sergeant, you're not a lieutenant, you're not a captain. You're a fluffer. That's what you are.
All right, listen.
Yes, Chief. Yes, Chief. Yes, Chief. I'll try to choke less, Chief.
Yeah. Like, share, and subscribe. 2 hours and 21 minutes into it. We thank the chat. Of course, the engagement is awesome. You guys got us. I don't even care if this one gets monetized. I actually have fun.
I think we're done.
I don't really care. We make like 3 cents. Excuse me.
No ads on this one, people.
Oh man, I'm out in Alaska. This cottonwood has been killing my allergies. Ooh. But excuse me. Here we go. Mom, finish this off, man.
Yeah,
guys. Fluffer.
Yeah, guys. It was a great discussion, guys. And just to wrap things around, politics is everything now. So you guys got to pay attention to what's coming down the road. When they start pushing certain messages, you got to expect that this thing is going to trickle down into policy somehow. So you just can't sit around and do your job. You have to pay attention and really, really see what's coming down the line and prepare for it, if you want to make it through your career, So, yeah, great discussion.
No, awesome. Listen, great topic today. Thank you to the chat. Later on today, of course, 17:05, which is 5:05 p.m. For you guys that still haven't figured out military time, check out the Executive Perspective. And, of course, tomorrow you'll have Sal Greco back on Thursday. And please like, follow, and check out 10-4 Tavern. Guys are doing an awesome job. Pete Forselli and Tom Joyce. Everybody, we appreciate it. Shout out. And John, I'm glad you made it. Take care, everybody.
There's a handful of retired officers that don't live in the state that have a lot to say about the dream team, as I like to call it. All of a sudden, they retire and have a master plan on how to fight crime. But nothing to contribute when they were here. They want to come back and be part of the dream team. What can I say?